Could you hear it? Well, let's just go ahead and go with roll call.
Mayor Thomas,
Here.
Vice Mayor Taylor,
Here.
Councilmember Borelli,
Here.
Councilmember No,
Here.
and Councilmember Zaragoza appears to be absent at the moment.
Yes, he is. He might be joining us a little bit later.
All right, thank you.
So, Regina, could you mute me again? I think somehow I'm still on there, even though my computer says muted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, can you repeat that?
Let's see. Can you mute my computer? For whatever reason, I'm getting an echo on that. I hope it's not messing things up. Can you hear that okay?
Regina, can you hear us?
Sorry, Cleve. Yes, I'm here. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to let you know that you appear as being muted. I can see that the city council meeting a panelist is unmuted. Are you still having problems?
Oh, do you have me in here twice? We good?
No, I show one panelist titled City Council Meeting. That's the one that I believe I'm getting audio from. The one panelist named Dennis Thomas is muted.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, do you have YouTube open?
No. I'm just trying to shut everything and get done with this here. Okay, there we go. That was a bad idea, apparently. Okay. Okay, announcement to the public. We have none. Let's see, could I please get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move for adoption. Second.
All right. We have Patty moved and Kara seconded. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember No.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And moving on to item number 5, discussion and action items. Tonight is our main topic here is 2021-2022 operating budget and capital improvement program budget review and discussion. And we look forward to a great presentation from Dave and lively discussion with all of our department heads. So away we go.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's so nice to see you in person. And yes, tonight we do have a lot of material for you. We're going to present your budget requests tonight, and we're going to start with a presentation. I know we have some newer council members and maybe members of the public that are new to our budget development process. And my clicker's not working. It's working earlier.
Nothing's working.
I can be your clicker, Dave.
Would you mind, Kirsten? Thank you, sir. So tonight, what we'll be covering is budget basics, just going through the process that we take to develop a budget. We'll talk about our operating budget as compared to our capital improvement program budget or CIP budget, and also our budget development program, which is about a 6-month process. So, like Terry's going to bring up it's like a presentation mocked up. Great. Terry, if you could advance it to the next slide, if you don't mind.
Looks like it's gonna work for you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Cleve and Terry, very much. All right, so just as a refresher, our fiscal year in encompasses the period of July 1st to June 30th. The budget team, which prepares the initial recommendations to the city council, includes the city manager and all department heads. We do use fund accounting because we're a local government municipality. We go by the Government Accounting Standards Board and governmental, generally accepted accounting principles. And we also follow state and federal laws. And we follow the municipal code as well as policies and procedures developed by the council.
Dave, you want to use this?
Thank you.
I think it's on already. Nope, there we go.
Great. In developing the budget, we do consider agreements. So these are commitments to our labor groups, to say like a maintenance agreement for a copy machine, so on and so forth, debt service. We also confer with HDL, your consultant for sales tax forecasts. We also get forecasts for gas tax and other revenues through the League of California Cities. We have two budgets, your operating budget, which is for day-to-day expenditures, and your CIP budget, which we mentioned earlier. The council adopts the budget every year, and it's a living document that can be revised at any time. So, again, your operating budget's for day-to-day operations. 71% of your general fund, for example, is just personnel. So that's salaries and benefits. That's very common in other cities. And then the other 29% is for services, materials, supplies, non-fixture equipment, training, travel, and conference, insurance, utilities, and other items. The funds, you actually have about 40 funds within your budget. You think about, a business typically has one set of books, one balance sheet, one income statement. The city has 40. And the primary ones for your operating budget include the general fund, your gas tax fund, which pays for maintenance, your downtown parking fund, grant funds, your assessment districts. We have a benefit assessment district, the Richard Orchard Hill, and two landscaping lighting maintenance districts, or LLMDs. You have three sales tax measures, Measure H, J, and L, and your water sewer funds, and your general liability fund for insurance and claims. Yes, Mayor.
Thank you for just a moment. I would like to acknowledge that, Michael Saragosa is attending via Zoom. So he's here at the meeting now, just so people would know.
Thank you for that, Mayor. All right, your operating budget, this year totals $19.9 million. It actually dropped a little bit because of COVID-19 and the impacts to the economy. The primary funding sources for your general fund are assessments, fees, grants, rates, and taxes. And your CIP budget, now your CIP budget is primarily for major capital improvements in infrastructure. So your streets, your storm drains, your water lines, your sewer lines, water reclamation facilities, and other facilities throughout the city. And your CIP, the dollars vary. So one year you may have some very large projects like the Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2. That was about $11 million project. That really bumped up your CIP. And so as grants and other monies come through for projects, it can vary quite a bit, where your operating budget is more consistent, grows steadily. And the budgets for your CIP carry over year to year. Typically, a project takes more than a year to design and construct. And so each one's a little different too. Some may be one-year projects, some may be 5, 10-year projects. The CIP funds we use, general CIP, which really comes from the general fund, your downtown parking fund, transportation fund, which houses all your grants that Rebecca needs, attracts and retains. The TIN fee fund for your traffic impact mitigation fees, your Measure H fund, and your Measure L fund. And again, primary sources, charges, fees, grants, and taxes for your CIP budget. Kind of shifting gears and talking about how do we develop the budget? Well, the first thing we do, we hold a kickoff meeting with your budget team. Again, the city manager and all department heads. Typically either in December or January. We have a binder and a schedule that we follow. It's very meticulous. So we begin working on our budget for the following fiscal year. We present a mid-year budget to you in March, and that's basically a forecast for the remainder of the current fiscal year. And that kind of helps us to, determine how are we doing? Are we going to have carryover funds from the current fiscal year that we could roll into next fiscal year, or do we have a deficit where we need to dip into reserves? Your budget team does look at each line item, so by account, we literally look at each variance, and we meet and we go through those, and whether an account goes up or down, there needs to be justification for that. You know, is it an inflationary impact? Is personnel costs going up? Fuel, for example. We also look at alternative service levels. Now, what these are changes in program. So if a program increases or decreases significantly, it could be a new position, it could be, you know, a new Parks and Rec program. Those are presented as a separate item so that you can evaluate those. We talked about CIP budget requests. Your capital outlay are for smaller equipment, police vehicles, computers, those kind of things. And your conference training and travel, some of that is mandatory, some of it's not. Again, we look at that separately so that you can see the difference and all other assumptions. We do forecast. Some of our forecasts we do ourselves. Most of them we do ourselves. Some we rely on HDL and League of California Cities. The department heads do a great job forecasting their services and supplies, part-time personnel, so on and so forth. The finance department does most of the projections for personnel, full-time personnel, as well as utilities. So you did hold a governance workshop. Some years you hold a goal-setting workshop, and I know the governance workshop was kind of a kickoff to a more extensive goal-setting process, and that's great. That helps us plan for the following year. Tonight we have our budget workshop number 1. On May 20th, we'll have our second budget workshop. So tonight what we're going to do is present all the requests that the departments have made, recommending for the budget this year. You'll have a chance to review those and comment on those. And then the second meeting will bring all that back, but we'll also have recommendations on how do we balance the budget. Typically, the requests exceed the resources available, but what we've heard from you in the past, you want to see what the needs are. Sometimes these are mandatory legal things that we have to do. They could be health and safety things that we may be able to fund, we may not. So we want you to see all those things. And then the first meeting in June, we'll have your open hearing. We'll present the budget at kind of a 10,000-foot level with a PowerPoint presentation. And then your second meeting in June, we actually present the 120-page document, which is your proposed budget for adoption. So, and then any revisions throughout the year will make you aware of any changes that need to be made to the budget. So again, that's just a 10,000-foot level of the process, where we're going, what we're doing tonight. Are there any questions from the council?
Not so far.
Do we already know the difference between the requests and what we have?
We have estimates. We're still working on that. It's pretty rough. We currently have an overall deficit, especially in your general fund. But there's some things that, as a team, we haven't really looked at the refinement process yet, and that's next week. We're going to start working on that. I can tell you right now, the general fund, with all the requests, is about 1.2, 1.3 million in deficit. So we have quite a bit of work to do. But again, it's very early in the process.
I'm gonna give me the other one, Dave, but you can keep that one. Yeah, I just want to add to that. We are about 1.3 million out right now, but that includes all of our ASLs, which amount to a little over $900,000, and our capital outlay, which is about a little over $300,000. So you add those two together, that's about what our deficit is right now. And I'm not saying we can eliminate all of those, but that's the process we'll go through. And what we want to do this evening is get kind of your priorities as we talk about these things. And then when we go back to balance and take care of the budget for your next meeting, we'll implement your priorities hopefully in there and give you those options so that we come back with hopefully a balanced budget at your next meeting.
Either move the screen or the.
Just right there. There you go. That's a little better.
Great, good.
Sorry for the delay there. So in your binder, under the blue tab, we have, your CIP request. And it starts out with a purple bar summary, and behind that is all the detail. And the first, request we have is building permit software. And I'd like to ask Pierre Regards, our Director of Development Services, to come up and kind of walk us through this request.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's good to see all the council members, Mr. Mayor. It's like old times again. Anyways, yes, this is a request for building permit software, and I do want to add a couple extra things to this request. First, a little bit of the background. We're currently using the county software that was basically given to us, and they provide backup service and to the software, so they maintain it for us. It is a Lotus IBM system. It's very antiquated, so it currently suits our purposes. So say when a customer comes in to our county and they're making an application for a building permit, that's the software that we're using. We actually will fill out the form on the system. We can print and use, the receipts are done with the system. We can track, and we can look up permits. We can query using address or parcel number or contractor. So it's pretty versatile, but it's just antiquated. And as you saw, the title is building permit software. So we're hoping when we replace this, it'll be a more updated, more robust software system that we would be able to utilize not only for permitting through the building division, but the planning division as well. The engineering department should be able to use that software for tracking theirs, so it's all done on a parcel-based system. We're hoping that the new system would also be able to tie in with our GIS, our Esri system, so that we have the ability then to do a vast amount of query and run reports and different things like that. The second thing I want to point out is the amount. We had been working quite diligently with a software company. It was a very small company, but they had provided us with several demonstrations. They actually provided a demonstration at the county probably, I would say, a year and a half ago. I was invited to attend that, very impressed. The county was also impressed. So they purchased one portion of their software services, and that's to manage the customers. So they're currently using that. We were going to buy their regular permitting software, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. The head of the company was a building official for Oakland. He's now the building official for San Francisco. In my last conversations with him, their principal software engineer passed away, and so he's gone dark. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's I'm just sorry to say, because it was a very, very cost-competitive system. So this estimate here is a little bit more at the higher end. I'm hoping maybe we wouldn't spend more than $60,000, but I didn't want to. Well, I just wanted to make sure that we had sufficient money to buy it. One other thing I want to add too is and we've discussed this among staff quite some time. It's brought to my attention some time ago to try and cover these costs, and so remove the cost burden on the general fund. We're looking at, and we have that ability, many cities, jurisdictions do this, we can add a fee onto all permits, and it wouldn't be a lot, be, maybe $2, $3 per permit, that would then fund our permitting software system and its maintenance. So we need to go through the Nexus study and make sure that it's allocated appropriately also for permits. But that's a way I think that we'll be able to fund this. in the future, once we get the system in place. So with that, I'm happy to answer the questions you have.
I feel like when we looked at this before with the other company, wasn't it around 17,000?
It was actually less than that. I actually got them down because of COVID. There were some costs on travel and having your team actually come out, but we were in Zoom meeting and it really halved a lot of those costs. But we got it down to, I would say, to about $6,000.
Okay.
Competitive.
Significantly more expensive.
So the problem that I've seen with a lot of these companies is they're basically, I would just say, a chainsaw to mow the lawn.
Mhm.
And that's because their target is medium to larger cities. So they're looking at jurisdictions of 100,000 people or more. So it's significant greater volume of permitting that they're going through where, we don't do that kind of volume.
Yeah.
Very small outfits, small staff. We don't need a lot of the bells and whistles that those much larger jurisdictions have. And so you buy a system from one of these larger companies, you're gonna pay a lot more just because they're looking at an economy of scale.
Mhm.
It works for a bigger agency than we are. And so, we're getting, I guess because of COVID, there's so many people that are raffled in their office or at home. There's a lot of products now coming in, and I'm getting cold calls and emails like you wouldn't believe on different systems. So some of them I'll have the ability to take a look at, and I'll bring in other staff, and if it looks promising, we'll engage them. But right now, this just happened, so we're sort of out in the cold at the moment. And so that's why you see that more general cost estimate of the system. So
Okay.
hopefully we can bring that way down, and hopefully we have a means of applying that fee per permit that we're paid for and take the burden off the general fund.
How long do you think it's gonna take to get all these other folks to, you can kind of, have more of a, to pick and choose?
Yeah, it takes a while. It was very disappointing because we'd probably spent about a year with this other company, it's called Soft Track, and we really, really appreciated them, and we were ready to make a deal. I was asking for the service contract, and that's when all of a sudden everything went, well, what's the term now that savvy people use?
Ghosted?
Ghosted, yeah, I was ghosted. So I just kept bugging him, and finally that's what he told me. So we're sort of starting from scratch. So it takes a long time to really ferret out a software package that'll work for us, but we're going to have to move in that direction. I don't think we have a choice, unfortunately.
It does kind of hammer home an important point that whatever company we go with, it shouldn't be dependent on one software engineer.
True.
There should be more structure to the company.
It is puzzling, and we did ask him for some references, so I have a couple of jurisdictions where they provide the software package. I'm going to give them a call
Yeah.
and see what they have to say and maybe see what's going on.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful system. It's just,
Michael Saragosa has a question, at least his hand's up, I don't know, there he is. Hey, Michael.
Yes, I do. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and I apologize I'm not there. When I said I was going to be there, I forgot I was actually flying to Southern California for Mother's Day, so sorry about that. My question, it kind of goes along with Kara just said, and that's, can we, I don't know, the conversation with El Dorado County, since they bought something, I would assume there had to be a contract with some kind of some legacy way to keep it in place or else get their money back, unless they signed a really bad contract. I'm just wondering if there's a way if there's still something out there, because I remember talking about this last year and we were sort of dubious about the low cost, but at the same time, it's still incredibly cheaper than what we're looking at now. And I'm all for, recovering the fee or recovering the cost through a fee, but I don't know if there's any more due diligence we can do to see if there's a way to still get a much, a better pricing out there.
we'll certainly try. As far as the permit package that was purchased by the county, that was their building division. And my contact over there is Don Knight. He was the person that invited me to that first demonstration that the company had. They didn't purchase a permitting, software package because they have the soft track, or they have the, track it, which, you know, the whole county uses. And that was very extremely expensive, way, I would say significantly more expensive than what you see on the screen. So they purchased a subset of SoftTrack, and it was a system to manage their customers that come to the counter, because they're very busy, they have a lot of different stations, and they do a lot of things. So it was just a way of tracking their customers and tracking the assignments. So it's very different than what we were planning on purchasing. But I do plan on calling Mr. Knight over there and talking with him and see if there's been any change of service with the company.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Good, all right, I'm good. Any more questions?
Thank you, Pierre. The next project is the town hall carpet replacement, and I think I asked Terry Zeller, Director of Community Services, to present this item.
Hi, can you hear me all? Okay. The first item that I have is, both of these projects that, are in your binder, were actually presented at the 2019-2020, budget workshop, but they didn't, make the cut at that particular time. And the first one is the town hall carpet replacement, and what we're talking about is the office portion of the building. And that carpet is about 20 years old, and there's also the upstairs carpeting that needs to be replaced. And what we're doing is we're trying to look at a durable commercial carpet, and the idea is on the lower floor of the office, we would use the carpet squares just because we've got so much furniture and equipment on the floor in the office that it would be better to move everything to one side and install it rather than try to figure out how to have a garage sale type look out in the parking lot when we're trying to put our carpet in. And then the upstairs can be a roll of carpet that would match. So that is the first project. Any questions about that?
I just want to add something there that I talked to Terry about. One of the things they're doing upstairs, correct, Terry, is some sort of soundproofing that's going in with the carpet that hopefully will cut down on the noise.
That would be my question.
Yeah, that's gonna be a side benefit, is that there's a, it's called Hush Step. It's a foam product, and it will actually take a lot of the footfall out, so we won't hear it down here.
Yeah.
And then the second project is another one that was in the 2019-2020 budget, and that is replacing the sand in our pool filter system. So from what I understand, the sand in the city pool filters are about 16 years old, and they're recommended to be replaced every 10 to 12 years on a seasonal pool. But we are still recommending that we do this, and so it would be new laterals, new gaskets for the system, new gravel and sand, and all the labor for our sand filters. And so that total cost is around $16,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about that.
No questions?
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. The next project is the lead water service replacement, and next down to Director of Public Works.
Before you jump into this, I have a question I can't remember who asked it, but, which one of these, or some of these are big asks that may not make the cut, and some are reasonable that we need to do, and do we have any, because I'm listening to this, and I'm trying to put it into context of how we're moving through, getting ready for next year, and I'm having a hard time just in my mind as I'm thinking about thinking, well, that's never gonna happen, or, that's a serious consideration, or, they're shooting for the moon. I mean, where do these land in this, and how do we know? I mean, it's nice to hear it, but unless it's in context, it's really, how do we get that sense of that right now? Or is that a thing that I can ask? I mean, I'm asking you, but is it a thing you can answer, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I can tell you in the past, this goes back about 5 or 6 years ago, we used to present to you the request with our recommendations, what we were going to, recommending funding and what not to fund.
Right.
And actually, by happenstance, we ran out of time one year, and we didn't have our recommendations ready. And so we presented the request like we're doing tonight, where they're not adjusted. And several council members like that. And so that's why we're here this way. And I can tell you that we haven't finished our work to measure which projects are the highest priority and which ones are lower priority. So we have a lot of work. We can provide input as to maybe a 1 to 10 or something like that, degree of importance. But in the end, it comes down to money, priorities. And so I know as a group, we don't have a recommendation for you tonight.
Yeah.
But on the 20th, we will.
We can also, I'm sure that Terry could come back here, and I think, I'm gonna look at Terry now, hopefully I'm saying this right, I think that he would tell you that the sand filters are more important than the carpet. Those have been a long time, and that goes to wear of equipment, et cetera, we don't replace those. So some of those you can read into it, and we can try to, as we do these presentations, Nick's got one coming up right now that is almost a mandatory, I will say, when he describes that one to you. So we can give you that information. The town hall carpet has been on our schedule for many years. I
Yes,
think.
it has.
I've seen this a couple.
But in terms of it being mandatory,
We still have carpet.
we still have carpet, yeah. So that's about the best I could do to
Okay.
describe that, right? Hopefully that helps a little bit.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Really happy to be here. Mine is the lead water service replacement. This is a continuation of a project that was approved last year. Several years back, the water board requested that agencies either identify how many lead water services they have, or come up with an inventory of unknown services. And so when we initially did that, we came up with 400 that were suspected to have lead fittings on them, and were of unknown material. Today, we're at about somewhere probably between 325, 350 that we still have left to either identify or replace. Just this week alone, we've had the guys out potholing, and they've potholed 17 services. Out of those, 2 of them were lead. So we're looking really good with that. We're on a 10-year timeline, required to do 40 of them a year, and working with engineering. Several were replaced as part of the Spring Street project. Several were replaced as part of the Mosquito project. I don't think that they found any lead ones on the Mosquito project, so we've been doing really good with that. We also added, as another part of our permit, recently we added 5 more lead and copper sampling sites. We do that every 3 years, and every time that we've got our sample results back from lab with that, we've been below the levels, below detection levels on several sites, and within the parameters on everything else. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. The other thing I want to add too is that even though it's called a lead service replacement, we've never found an entire service that's lead. It's a small section that's called a gooseneck that kind of makes a weird angle, and when we go in and replace those, we replace them with low lead fittings that go to polyline and transitions back to the galvanized line. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm confused.
Okay.
You said you replace them with low lead.
Low lead. So, and that's the classification for any materials that go into a water system. Like, is the majority of those materials are gonna be brass. And so like, as being designated as a low lead fitting, it means that there's like, I don't know the exact number, but it's less than like 1%.
Okay, so, okay.
It meets
Yeah.
the standard.
It meets the health standards.
Well, they might come out, like next year and say absolutely no lead. So that's what I'm thinking. As long as we're doing it, why don't we just eliminate lead completely?
That's what the manufacturers supply. And I would say that there's probably less than 0.5% in
Got it.
lead, as opposed to ones that are like 100% lead that you could melt down and make bullets efficiently. So.
And this is what's recommended at
Yes,
this time.
yes, absolutely.
So,
Yes, sir.
do you actually have to pothole all 325 of those services that you've identified?
So the ones that are on the list, the way that they were identified as potentially being lead services was our staff went out. There's on the meter, it's called a curb stop. And so based on the style of curb stop, those curb stops were installed in the same time frame that lead goosenecks were. So that's why every time that we've found a lead gooseneck, it's been on one of those styles, but not every style of curb stop like that has had a lead gooseneck. So yes, every single one is going out and being potholed, and unless we find like, an amazing reason why it wouldn't need to be. Something that would stop us from potholing every single one would be if like, say there were 5 addresses that were in a row, we went out there and potholed 1 or 2 of them, and we found that there was a C900 or
A non-lead?
exactly, well, not necessarily non-lead, but like, later timeline material. Something that's been used after lead. It was in the ground. They gave us a very, very strong reason to suspect that they weren't lead.
Just a comment, just in case there's any concerned citizens listening at home, we do test the water, and
Yes.
we have very low or no levels of
Exactly,
lead.
and so we we go out and we conduct the sampling, actually with lead and copper sampling, the residents conduct that. We go and we give them a sheet of instructions, they let their taps set overnight because it lets the heavy metals settle within their system. They go and run it first thing in the morning, we put those samples on ice, take them down to a third-party independent lab, and I would say 95% of those samples come back as ND, and that's no detection.
Okay,
Like the levels are so low in those that it's a non-issue.
okay,
And then that's pretty much, that's the same with everything in our water system. We're in full compliance with every state, EPA, Division of Drinking Water regulation possible. We just went through our, compliance inspection, everything was satisfactory with that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as people hear the word lead,
yeah, I know.
we're just trying to make it
Yeah,
better than this.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Questions?
How many potholes does 150,000 get us?
Well, that's why right now internally, we're trying to pick off the low-hanging fruit on little side streets, like, did some on Acacia, did some on, we try and take care of them when we have active water leaks. So if our guys are out fixing a water leak somewhere, like there's a water leak on West Wing, it's a dead-end street, we were working on that on Monday, if they hit pothole the rest of that street. But that's why we were able to knock several of them off. But here's another thing with it. So right now, we're in kind of an identification phase, where we're going around seeing what we need to do, and with those 2 that we found that were lead, what we've been doing is holding off on replacing those until we get a better idea of, because if there's 10 of them that are lead in there, it's gonna make more sense to use this dedicated funding to go in there and have a contractor put all new services go into that, as opposed to having the public works guys tied up when there's other things that they should be doing with that.
Okay.
So I would expect us to be able to pick off a bunch of low-hanging fruit right now at a very reduced cost, but later on down the road, there's gonna be a bunch that are potentially on like Coloma Street, where it's concrete and it's solid, and there's gonna be a lot more to going out there and popping, so, yes.
So, sorry if this is a silly question, but when you say potholing, I know what a pothole is as a noun, but when you use it as a verb, are you making potholes?
We are. So when I say potholing, we're taking our vectors, that's soon to be out of compliance with, the Air Resources Board, I'd add. We're going out with the jackhammer. First thing we do is we go out and we locate the main. And the good thing about these is that it's easier to trace out the materials because they're lead and of other metals. So we go out, we trace to where the customer service ties into our main. Guys will take the jackhammer, they'll bust out a hole that's maybe like 2 feet wide right there, and then we'll bring the vector in. The vector goes in there, it sucks all the material out, we go down and see, put eyes on it, see what's actually, like, we identify the anomaly, and then do whatever we need to. If we need to replace it, if there's just one, or we put it on the list of, to get replaced in the future. Then we come back with, AB and sand, backfill that, compact it, tamp it down, and then put cold patch on it, or asphalt, whatever's possible.
All right, thanks.
Yep, so that's,
You're making,
we're making,
but you're patching them.
we're potholing utilities, but we're backfilling everything that we need to on top of it.
Okay.
Any more questions? All right.
Thank you, Nick. The next project is the Giovanni Road sewer line replacement, and Rebecca Neese will present this item.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see all your faces in person. Thanks, first of all, thanks for letting us have an opportunity to present staff's recommendations for capital improvement projects. everybody kind of collaborated and worked together. Engineering and public works worked really well together, and so we were able to come up with this pretty extensive list of to-dos, if you will. So, you know, I kind of want to address a few things that you might have noticed if you've looked at the spreadsheet of all the projects. You may have noticed we actually have quite a few projects on the list this year, and so I'll apologize in advance for the time allotment that we needed. You may also have noticed that projects either have construction funding and others maybe have minimal funding aside, and that others are maybe even adding additional funds to existing CIPs as they're moving through design and implementation, and for some, securing actual construction funding. We took a little bit different approach on adding projects with only minimal funding this year. And the reasons for this approach is when a project, particularly one containing utilities, is added, we rarely have a designed scope that's been thought through, but rather more of an idea or a concept. And so coming up with an estimate for that is pretty rough at best. For example, a road with a known water leak, we know that we're going to be replacing segments of the water main, but to the extent of that effort are rarely fully known at the time a project is implemented. In the past, staff would actually do their best guess for the estimate and for a total project cost, and then attempt to fully fund the project at its adoption. Yet when we move forward through projects and as they vie for prioritization, or being ready to list status, we found ourselves in a place where we either, one, had available funds held up on a project that wasn't quite ready for construction, and two, we found ourselves having to liquidate those funds to construct more ready projects. This actually ended up being the case in order for us to deliver Mosquito Road. So in 2020, it was an opportunity for all of us to pivot on a whole host of things, but in this particular case, we chose to pivot on our CIPs and create construction reserves, you may recall. We also took a more common project programmatic approach, similar to like how federal funding is issued on projects. So really only taking what we need when we need it, and then reserving the other usable funds for projects as they progress ahead of others. This will allow for a better and more efficient project delivery. So when you see additional future funding will be needed, that's the reason why, and with that, I'll walk you through the CIP. So, the first one is the Giovanni sewer line replacement. You may recall we constructed not too long ago our Majora and Giovanni lift station project. And while we were out there, we actually found a city main crossing a private property without proper access or easement. And the main is actually in need of replacement. So this project, we are getting it in the queue, so to speak, about $25,000 out of Measure H to address initial engineering and utility assessment, as well as move efforts on doing proper right-of-way acquisition, i.e. getting the easements that we need to maintain our system. So we would be coming back at a later date, once this project would be adopted, we would come back at a later date as we get a little further down the line and have our survey work done, conceptual plans, and all the way up to construction. So this would be one of those projects where then, if we got to a place where we didn't have the funds already programmed, we would be adding construction reserve funds on this if we needed to. So the next project is Garden Loop sewer line replacement. Garden Loop connects to Garden Street, and it's over in the vicinity of Spring Street. And this road is in need of a few utility replacements, but the one that's most dire need is the sewer line. So we got our initial effort in with the sewer line replacement. Again, $25,000 ask out of Measure H. We will be coming back. That $25,000 will be the initial effort towards engineering and utility assessments. So we'll be getting like our topographic survey information and starting conceptual layouts. The other thing too I want to mention about these smaller access projects and these smaller utility projects is a lot of these actually have an opportunity to be designed in-house. We've had quite a few projects that we've been designing in-house. The Mosquito Utility project was actually designed in-house. And the Conrad Street Sewer project that's going to be moving towards construction in the next couple of months, that one was designed in-house. And so we have been picking off where we can some of these smaller projects to kind of preserve the funding, definitely more cost efficient that way. So we just figure out a way to phase it in.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Have these Measure H and L, the water, have they been discussed at the committee level yet?
Yes. They're actually our first step, and it was in March and April.
Yeah. So all these have gotten the thumbs up from them, and that's
Yeah.
why they're here now? Okay.
Yeah, Oh, yeah, no, we absolutely check in with Measure H and L committee before we bring recommendations to city council. They are considered obviously the advisory committee to the council, so. Yes, ma'am.
On some of these projects, are all of them, do they have to have actual pipe replacement, or can they, I'm becoming so educated with the project that I've had going on. Or can you do the sleeve thing?
Well, sometimes, we don't know until we get in there, but sometimes yes and sometimes no. For example, there were some segments of sewer that had to be replaced on Main Street, whereas the rest of the pipe could be,
I remember
PIPP,
that.
right?
Yeah.
Cast in place pipe.
So you don't do the camera thing before?
We do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we'll either hire somebody to do it for us as part of what Nick was explaining as utility potholing. That's part of that collective effort, or we, talk to our faithful brothers over in Public Works, and they run the camera down the pipe and send us the video, and we go through it and assess the condition of it.
That's quite a savings, you know,
Yeah,
to do that.
yeah, we're very grateful for having that available to us.
Okay, thank you.
The next project is Myrtle Avenue Sewer Main Replacement. This one is, one of the first of several projects that you're gonna kind of start to see coming through. So one of the goals at Measure H and Measure L, not only, as the measures themselves, but actually one of the goals of the committee was to, eliminate Orangeburg pipe throughout, the city. So for those of you that don't know what Orangeburg pipe is, basically pipe made out of, mulch and pitch. It's essentially wood. So, I mean, it was put in, you know, around the 30s or so when some materials were a little bit more scarce, usually around World War II. And so when, and actually into the 40s too. So.
And the 60s.
Yes.
Because I had it put
Even
in.
through and up to the 60s, yeah.
Exactly.
It, you know, was cost effective. And,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
when you needed a sewer pipe and you're giving.
Not when you have to go and replace it.
Right, and to their defense, back then they didn't know what it would turn into.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, it's great they did a lot, you know, with what they had. But this, now has become a goal of ours to replace some of these pipes. They, we're found that they are actively leaking into the ground. But we developed at a preliminary stage, we developed a program that we refer to as the Nuisance Orangeburg Pipe Elimination, or NOPE. So that's our little pneumatic device that we use for remembering how to get rid of these. So every time you see a NOPE project, that's what it is.
Appropriate.
So, this project again has about $25,000 initial ask for Measure H funding. Myrtle Avenue is actually one of our older segments, and it's off of Canal Street. So you'll be noticing that we're going to be doing a lot of work directly north and directly south of Highway 50, because those are actually some of our little older neighborhoods, you know, the Spring Street, Canal, B Street kind of areas, and then the Gurley, Lewis and Clark, and Darlington areas too. So. Our next project is the Randolph Creek Sewer Main Replacement. For those of you who aren't familiar with exactly where Randolph Creek is, it actually goes underneath Highway 50, parallel to the trail near Mosquito Road, right behind Mosquito Outfitters. So if you have an opportunity to enjoy our lovely trail that was recently cleaned up this weekend, thank you volunteers, you'll actually see the pipe sitting on some pretty rickety brackets in the creek channel. It's undersized, it's not well supported, and to be honest, if we got a large enough branch, it would probably take it out. So, we have been having this project on our radar for a while, and, it's just time to put it in the queue. So, we were looking at an initial ask of this, actually in Measure L funding, for $25,000. And so the intent would be that this project would relocate the sewer either into Mosquito Road and or Broadway Court, which is that little street that goes parallel, goes directly adjacent to Mosquito Outfitters, in between Mosquito Outfitters and the auto repair shop. So the next project is one of my personal favorites. It's the Courtyard Revitalization Project. So, you know, and all these wonderful, and I might invite Public Works Director Nick to come up here too. So in all these wonderful projects and ways to better our city and how we do things, one of the more important projects is not only delivering good roadway and infrastructure projects, but also delivering good projects to support city services. You know, we've taken a huge initial effort to move towards a public safety building for our police and fire, which is wonderful. You know, if we could wave our wand, we'd give everybody new facilities, right? But one area that we, are quite a bit overdue is, revitalizing our corporation yard. Our corporation yard serves as our main hub for our public works department. That's where, Parks and Rec has their, facilities and shops as well. And, any water part that the city comes up with to fix a water main break, like what they did at night on Benham, that came from our corporation yard. Any kind of storm drain improvements, that's where our street maintenance and our sleeper and, sewer parts are all kept, and that's basically, they support the entire infrastructure of the city in terms of maintenance and operations. So getting, that facility tuned up to keep them efficiently moving on their job, would be extremely helpful. Because they do have so many, you know, things that they get involved in, all the water, the sewer, the storm drain, and the road, there is a reasonable nexus to assign, funding of each type of funding source, sewer enterprise, water enterprise, and our road maintenance money, to help start the initial funding for this project. And, am I missing anything?
So this 75,000 would cover the entire, I was just gonna say that,
That's seed money, let's put it
you
that way.
know, as long as I've been on the council, the Corp Yard has been on, you know, and it's just, we keep piecemealing it. It would just be wonderful if we could just find some money to just do it, you know?
And I have a heart for maintenance folks in general. You know, at 2 in the morning when we're all snug as a bug in the rug and it's pouring rain outside,
Right.
they're out there.
I
They're
know.
cleaning the DIs, and so, I mean, just the small amount of, you know, just a small comfort, and efficiency in what they're able to do for our city services is vital to keeping, them as high of a level of output as they're putting out. So, you know, they do a phenomenal job catching up on our potholes, dealing with water main breaks, catching up on, you know, maintenance projects throughout the city, replacing lead services, dealing with sewer overflows. There's a lot.
We know all that.
Yeah.
We need to find some
Yeah.
money.
So I've already said my prayer for some stimulus funds, so.
Well, like I say, you know, 15 years and I've been listening to this and it's just not right. It's not right.
The very next one is, one we heard a lot about after the Street project, Bedford Avenue. We got a whole lot of, this looks great, when are you doing this one? So this project, was brought forth by public demand. Bedford Avenue Utilities and Repaving. It's an initial effort from Measure L, 25,000. This one is going to be, if I could have a crystal ball look into the future, this is probably going to be something similar along the lines of Spring Street. Similar in age, similar in effort, few surprises, I'm sure. So we'll just kind of, you know, each time we get these, projects, we get a little bit better, a little bit wiser, and a little bit more efficient. So, I'm looking forward to this project. This would actually address, a whole host of issues, but the utilities and the paving are the primary focus. The next one is the Cedar Ravine Culvert Replacement Project. You may be familiar with the Cedar Ravine Culvert. It actually ties directly into the, abutment at, Clay Street Bridge. And the age and the condition of the culvert varies greatly throughout the length of the culvert. We've actually had it LiDAR'd as part of the Clay Street project, and when we did that, we all looked at the video and the pictures and collectively went, uh-oh. So there are actually utilities punching through the side of the culvert. It changes from a round CMP to a box to an unsupported box. The other part of this culvert that people, some people are aware of and some people aren't, is that the culvert runs about 1.5 feet below and 1.5 feet off of the Druid monument. So if this culvert fails, that monument's going in with it, and that we don't want to happen. So we're looking at some pretty creative ways on how to replace this culvert. This culvert does span from Pacific Street, carries the Cedar Ravine Creek as the main conveyance over towards Hangtown Creek. And so we're looking to do some initial effort on this. We do have a pretty decent head start in it with the Clay Street project, and ideally it would be great to have that addressed as part of the Clay Street project. So we'll see how it all comes about. You know, we had a similar scenario on Broadway. We did a Broadway storm drain project concurrently with the Upper Broadway project. It was great in terms of getting economies of scale and efficiencies in our bid items. So if it works out that we can do that here too, that would be wonderful.
Rebecca,
Yes, ma'am.
didn't you do some work when you did Pacific Street and
Yeah.
you
So.
ran into, I know, a
we did.
huge
Yeah.
situation?
Oh, yeah, so, you know, right after we had received, the LiDAR photos and video and everything, and we were kind of doing this,
Yeah,
we were working on the Pacific Street repaving project, which also replaced some lead goosenecks too, so that was good, that was a very efficient project for that. But while they were doing the work and preparing to do paving, the top of the culvert on the end of Pacific Street actually started to fail. And so then they actually had to tear the top off. Now, when we were replacing one of the water services, it turned out to be a little bit of a blessing because it kept us from flooding the entire intersection of Cedar Ravine and Pacific because it had a place to go. But ultimately, we had to engineer and design a brand new top for the culvert. The walls are actually, in some places, were pretty sturdy, and particularly at that location, but it became very clear to us that it's time to look seriously at this. Next project is Dimney Lane repaving. So we got Mosquito all cleaned up, and the project that came up after that one was, Mosquito looks great, when are you doing Dimney? That was the next one. So Dimney, we completely and wholeheartedly agree that that project needs to get addressed. Particularly, you know, does provide a trail crossing to the El Dorado Trail. We are addressing a few things with this project too that were an accidental oversight on some of the head crossing buttons. So that's coming with this project. We apologize for that one. We thought we were ordering one kind, we ordered a different. So, but we will be repaving this project. And actually, the nice thing about this project is you'll notice it doesn't say additional funding needed. That's because we already have a bid. So we're ready to go. We just, once we get projects like this adopted and the money is received, we can start sending these out for construction because they're underneath the 60,000, which allows basically direct contracts and public contracts. Yes.
I want to jump back to Ravine Culvert.
Sure.
How much of that is any of that part of the Clay Street? Because I know that the whole intersection and the redo of that is part of this, but it doesn't go all the way up to Pacific Street, or?
Yeah, the work limit actually stops short of Pacific Street. The other part too is a portion that's actually, from Main Street, the intersection to Pacific Street. It's actually located, the majority of it is located on private property. So, do they have any responsibility there, or? ultimately, that may be the case, but we're working through that. I don't have a definitive answer for you right now.
All right. Sorry.
We covered Dimity Lane repaving. Any questions on Dimity? The next one is Carson Road sewer line replacement. Carson Road, as you know, connects Broadway, up over Highway 50, and it heads towards the northern city limits and out towards, Apple Hill area. We've had a couple of problematic, sewer spill locations over in the, area up the hill, and so we were ready to take a serious look and see what's actually going on with our sewer system. You know, one spill, maybe it's an anomaly, maybe it's a flush, you know, a box of diapers down or something, who knows, right? But this one actually, we've had multiple spills at a similar location, so then it's usually pretty indicative if there's an issue with the main. So, this will be the initial funding effort to, check that out, do an assessment, see where we're at. Coloma Street Utilities and Repaving. So Coloma Street is located in the right-of-way as it directly connects, part of the off-ramp from US Highway 50. That was one of the other ones that they said, great, you guys did Spring Street, where's the next one? But this little street has needed some love for a long time. So there's a combination of some family utilities as well as the need to do some repaving. It will be similar because of the age of the neighborhood. It will be a similar effort to what we experienced with Spring Street and what we anticipate with Bedford Avenue as well. So initial $25,000 ask is Measure L. We'll be coming back for future funding once we start getting an idea of scope for that. And then Ronald Loop Utilities and Repaving. Ronald Loop is located in the city right-of-way. It's a direct connection to Lakita Avenue and Sunview Drive on the east end of town. And the road condition's in pretty bad shape. It does need some repaving, but there's also some issues associated with city utilities there. So again, we're going to be doing an initial assessment, funding that with $25,000 of Measure L funds, and we'll be coming back for more of that once we have a better idea. So, the next project is annual storm drain compliance. So, as council is aware, the city does hold the state of California municipal separate storm sewer system, or an MS4 permit. And that permit not only requires monitoring and programming requirements, but it also actually requires physical, and, you know, tangible results in the field. One of the, areas that we've been directed or voluntold, however you want to put it, in this permit is to actually be implementing particular types of drain inlets, particular types of drain inlet markers, things like this to kind of just show and educate the public. There is a level of public outreach that has to happen. But this particular app actually kind of puts this to cover more physical and tangible improvements. Unfortunately, majority of our efforts to address MS4 is absorbed into operational budgets, general funds. But in this particular case, this covers some of the physical improvements. But this has been an ongoing discussion that we are challenged with state permits. Is, you know, unfunded mandates are our thing, and we have to navigate them, and we have to get through them.
When you say permit, it sounds like we don't have to do it, but we apply for a permit to do it.
I mean, we don't need to give
We don't want the,
anybody
we don't
else
want
to
the
arrest.
permit, we don't want the permit, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I love the state lets us deal with our own stormwater.
They do, and, you know, for a municipality as small as ours, there are some graces that are extended, and there's some things that are very challenging to meet. You know, we are not required, like, for example, when we have a water main break, because the chlorination and the volume of water and the amount of services that we provide for is actually a fairly low number than compared to, say, the city of Sacramento. We don't have to go through as much of an extensive effort to clean or dechlor or test, because it's clean water going into a clean creek, right? However, on the industrial general permit that we have with our wastewater treatment facility, what will happen is we're being held to clean water up to a percentage, but when the water's so clean already, because our water is essentially direct groundwater table or snow melt, it's so clean and so pure, to clean it to an infinite percentage puts it in an unrealistic category. So we've had to make adjustments within our permit. We've had to work with them on our new permit that we have to do. Any questions? Great. Coon Hollow road paving. Coon Hollow actually connects to Highway 49. It is city right-of-way. There's this little stretch there in between, kind of sandwiched between county right-of-way and state right-of-way. But you'll notice this also is a project that does not have additional funding needed, because we do have a bid on this, and we're actually ready to go to construction for this project. There are no city utilities. We're very excited to see that. And so we're ready to do a little repaving, and, you know, there's been a lot of thoughtfulness in developing this route for paving projects, because if we could, we'd pave every road tomorrow. Unfortunately, we have to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and so this is us making some of those incremental steps to eating the elephant one bite at a time and getting some paved roads addressed as soon as we can. So, but being wise about it, too, not jumping in without knowing what we're dealing with. Questions? Middletown road paving is another one. We are sandwiched, it's actually right at the connection to El Dorado County as well, and it's there's a segment of it, city right of way, that has, which is between Cabelacan Canal and the county, that has failed pretty extensively. Almost know exactly when you're in the city limits. So we're looking to repave. This also is a project that does not have additional funding needed, because we do have a bid and we're ready to go. So we're looking forward to getting this one repaved as well.
So none of the new projects that are going in, that housing project or anything, they
have some,
responsibility?
yes, they do, for frontage improvements, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought, you know, seeing the map, that they were required to do.
There are frontage improvements, and we'll work with them, we're working on conditions. I believe that that's part of what the grant that they've obtained for is to help pay for a portion of the frontage improvement.
Yeah, there's a, I think it's the
IIG grant.
pay for the frontage improvements, which are substantial.
Perfect, yeah, so they,
We've got a sidewalk on that.
Right, I
we got a
remember
sidewalk paid through a grant, frontage
The
improvements are
drainage.
Yeah, but this part is a little bit out of that area, so it gets to a point where it's our responsibility.
Rebecca, will this include any improvements to the shoulder?
We're already looking at that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. I know, right?
Terrifying.
I agree.
We did a big walk out there, and I was gonna put it on at least the top 10 list of near-death experiences.
Yeah, 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 it's really terrifying.
I felt like playing chicken, only I wasn't really intending to play chicken.
Yeah.
Then you get some of the, and I'm sorry to point it out, but the high school kids are racing to get to class and.
I was
also
more
middle
worried about the
school
high school kids walking on the
Yeah.
shoulder.
I am
Yeah.
both, okay?
Yeah.
It's both, yeah, it's
Yeah.
really bad.
And middle school kids.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is that hollow right there, private property?
Portions of it are, yeah.
Most of it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
We don't have a right of way.
We have a little bit, we have a sliver. So we're looking at building out the shoulder there.
There's also an old EID irrigation ditch
Goes down.
that goes through there. I mean, if there was any way to get an easement to that and turn that into like a little footpath or something,
Yeah, we can look at that.
that would be nice.
Yeah, 'cause they've abandoned all those, haven't they?
Huh?
I mean, schedule-wise, this is actually a great opportunity and time to do that because, you know, budget adoption won't happen until the end of June, right? And then we have to kind of wait for the money to show up from the state. We do have a little bit of time before we can say, go build it, you know, so, we will follow up on this and, I can report back to council hopefully by the next budget workshop. I'll make a note of that actually.
There's literally a section of this road, I walked it with May when she was in preschool back there, where the shoulder drops down below the road, going around a curve, and I'm like, I was up to my shoulder, like my head was on the level of the road, and I was like, wow, if somebody went off the road, I would be like decapitated. It's really,
And you know, I don't know why it hasn't happened more, 'cause like Panning Way,
yeah.
you know, on, where it's just blind trying to get out of either one of where that road connects, and it's just,
Yep.
So you're going to construction on Middletown Road, so you've done the engineering and everything and it's ready to go and,
I mean, there's always room for adjustments and we're pretty good at doing that when we need to.
yeah.
We can pivot.
We can take a second look at it and see if there is something we can do with
Yeah.
pedestrian traffic there.
We looked at
well, we
modifying.
talked about that when it came up about the housing, and I remember, I know I brought it up and I think some others did, and I thought it was being addressed then, about the safety.
Right. I know it was a comment. I will go back through that and look as well. It's been a hot minute since I've done the conditions, so I'll go back and look at it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. The next project is Maureen Drive repaving. If you've ever had an opportunity to drive Maureen Drive, you'll know exactly the small segment that we're talking about. So one thing we discovered when we were, you know, on a map, you look at it and you say, okay, but one thing I guess, we're really, made aware of is how many county residents come down Maureen Drive, and then their only outlet is through Maureen out to Hocking and Mosquito Road. So when we were doing traffic control, one of the superintendents with the contractor said, I didn't realize half the county lived up that road. So there is a small segment of Maureen Drive that is located in, city right-of-way that is in need of replacement. We had looked at doing this, at the time for, the Mosquito Road job to try to get economies of scale through paving. Unfortunately, we kind of got to it a little bit late. And then also at the other issue too was the money that we wanted to use it on, hadn't come yet. So we had to wait for the check to clear and then we could look at paving. So,
Wasn't there a county to a certain point and?
yeah, kind of leaves that.
And I thought a lot had been done then, that we partnered with the county and.
We did for a portion of it.
Am I on the wrong part of the Maureen Drive?
Well, no, you're on the right part. So we did, they got to a point where they ran out of money.
They ran out of money.
No, we,
Oh,
sorry.
we all did.
The folks that delivered that project back in the day. So they paved as much as they could possibly afford, and then they had to stop short of finishing the line.
Wow.
So, but I mean, what that also illustrates is, you know, thank goodness we have Measure L, because we didn't have the money that we have now to be able to go and fix these things, you know. We only got $200,000 in FTBGP funds. We only received a small amount of gas tax money, which then supplemented our, you know, streets and operations for public works. And so we really didn't have any money to repave any kind of roads until Measure L came along. The only opportunity we ever had was to piggyback it on another grant or another project, like doing the Blair's Lane Bridge replacement project.
Sure.
Or,
Well, I understand all that, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking, you know, we've been talking so much about the county and the city working together on, so when you're doing something like this, do you get in contact with the county to
I
see
do.
if they're doing, or if we can't combine something, if,
I do, and we do a good neighbor approach as far as paving limits, and whatnot too. A mutual, understanding, in terms of, you know, we have a line on a road,
right,
but at the end of the day, in this county, some cases literally, we're all family. So we, do coordinate with them. We do go a little bit above and beyond, and they reciprocate for us as well.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rebecca, I think
You missed one.
Thompson Way.
Oh, I did. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Thompson Way, thank you. That's right, notes. So Thompson Way is, comes off of Cedar Ravine Road, and it is a direct connection to Sierra School. So one of the other ways that we were prioritizing some of our projects, in addition to addressing our arterial roads, you know, we addressed Broadway, and we're going to be doing the rest of Broadway from Mosquito to Schnell. We looked at Fosterville Drive. We have a larger project going on with that. We've done Main Street. Now, our next tier, if you will, of prioritization are community-oriented facilities and schools. We were able to repave Schnell School Road in the fall, and now we're going to look to take care of Thompson Way as well. So this project would need to go out to informal bid solicitation, so city staff will be developing some plan sheets and some specs to send it out for informal bid per public contractor.
Okay, I'm sorry, I keep asking these questions, but I keep remembering stuff that went on. Wasn't there, I'm gonna say several homes that were built on Thompson Way that we had some sort of an agreement?
Street frontage improvement agreement.
Have they already done it, or do they kick in now, they required to kick in now when?
So street frontage improvement agreements are usually called in for the street frontage of adding curb gutter and sidewalk.
Oh.
So that's, yeah, safe routes to school projects and things like
Okay.
that, so.
I was thinking that there was something to do with the road, so. Okay.
Yeah, for example, we have some SFIAs over on Broadway where, it does actually directly call out for, construction of sidewalks, and we are building the Broadway sidewalks project, so that's kind of the next piece we're calling in with this SFIA. We talked about Maureen. We have next, we have Sherman Street. So Sherman Street is just a little guy. We also would be ready to repave that as soon as possible. That one's located direct connection to Sheridan and Turner Street and Washington Street over near Marshall Hospital. And I kind of mentioned before, we're gonna, we've been talking about a few projects over here. Right now, we're gonna start moving over to the south side. So we try hitting those older neighborhoods and start working our way out too. So Sherman Street is located in the city right of way, and we're looking at doing repaving. As far as we know, there are no utility issues. We will definitely take a second look at that, just based off of experience on Spring Street and everything else. So we do have construction funding program for this. We will take the minute it needs to at least look at utilities and make sure, but as of right now, we don't have any known utility issues, just the pavement deterioration.
So are you working on, these obviously are very round numbers at this
Yeah.
time. Economies of scale for like doing Thompson and Sherman at the same time and just batching these up?
Oh, it would be much better. That was part of the intent too.
Is the funding there for that, in the major H&L?
Yeah, so, that's kind of the intent. We go through like, little sections of doing it. Right now, grind and overlay, 3-inch grind and overlay plus thermo is about $4.10 per foot. So, using that number, we can kind of, that's been pretty consistent with the bids we've been receiving. So using that number, we look and we start, okay, what else around this area needs to be done? Because then you know, really only impacting an area one time for construction of doing several locations. But good question, thank you. The next one is the Mooney parking lot. You know, you may have noticed we've been picking off our parking lot paving projects one at a time. Some of them repairs, some of them full repave. Last year we programmed the town hall parking lot. That one is ready to go. Unfortunately, we have a snafu with a code enforcement item that needs to be addressed, and so we're working through that prior to paving so that the impacts of that don't tear up our brand new pavement. So that's the delay for that. But the Mooney parking lot is over here off 580 Main Street. Does serve this east end of Main Street. It's pretty weathered, and it's in need of repaving. We have $20,000 that we've set aside now. The downtown parking district fund does have a very metered flow of funding that comes in, and so I don't have it listed as additional funds may be needed, but it could happen. I just wanted to be upfront about that. So, the next one is Conrad Street water main replacement. While we were working on the Conrad Street sewer replacement, we identified that the water main over there is also in need of replacement, and this actually would include paving as well. We always intended to do the water and the paving together, and it happened to be the sewer was a little bit more of an urgent item, so we expedited that component up, so that this project will have some additional funding that we'll come back for, but at this time we're recommending $25,000 for Measure L. Cottage Street water main. So Cottage Street actually connects to Conrad and Garden Street, and it does have residential homes up there. And we also, during the Spring Street, realized that there are some significant items that we probably need to start addressing as far as the water main over on Cottage. We inserted some additional valves as part of the Spring Street process or project to control the system a little bit better for when we do this project. We knew it was coming, so, you know, valves are a fairly cheap investment for overall maintenance and control of your system if there's a failure. So we did add that in as part of the Spring Street project in anticipation of needing to move into this and the surrounding areas as well. So, the next one is Miller Way sewer line and water line replacement project. The sewer is a NOPE project. We do have some Orangeburg pipe that's existing out there, and when we were working on the Mosquito Road utility, we did identify that the water main out on Miller, as we were attempting to close valves and have a little bit better control to replace the main, that the valves are pretty fragile and have some leaks. So it was, you know, we looked at it, we talked about it through with Public Works, and we thought that this would be a good candidate to start moving forward on. So we do have Zero Enterprise Fund and Measure L Fund money programmed to it. Probably going to be taking a little bit more of an aggressive approach on this project to deliver it, just because everything out there and how the system operates and functions is very fresh in our minds from the Mosquito Road project, and it's a good opportunity to keep that momentum going too. So, the next one is Smith Flat Road storm drain and paving project. You may recall just recently you approved the agreement with El Dorado County Transportation Commission that programmed $200,000 of surface transportation block grant program funding in the amount of $200,000, so many acronyms, sorry. And I will say that this project will likely need additional funding. I don't think the 200 is going to cover all of it based off of values that we've been seeing. And there is going to be some storm drain work too. So, but this is a great opportunity for us to get a project that's programmed in and then assign, you know, our additional funds to it too. You know, that's one of the other awesome benefits about Measure H&L is their ability to leverage outside funding too. The next one is Lewis Street Utilities and Paving. Lewis Street is located as a direct connection to Pacific Street, and roadway and the utilities are failing and or failed, and so this project would address both of those. Again, another initial funding of about $25,000 in Measure L, and as we proceed, we'll have a better idea of scope for that. And then can't have Lewis without Clark. So we are looking at also doing the same, effort on Clark, which is actually a direct connection to Rotary Park, one of our treasured assets here in the city. So, kind of going back to that prioritization effort, we looked at community, locations and schools as that next tier of, prioritization of projects, and so this project clearly qualifies for that. And then our next project is Darlington Avenue, which is, as far as this goes, just a little stone's throw away from Lewis and Clark. But it is actually a direct connection off of Cedar Ravine Road, and does serve as a looped configuration, several other streets that pull off of it. So there is actually a lot of services and sub-connections to the system out there that will benefit from having Darlington essentially replaced and ready to go, and then we can start working on these little other pull-offs and course. Initial funding request is $25,000 for this as well.
Rebecca?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, because I don't understand our city water pipes or where they are or anything else, but but that break that we had down on Benham,
Yes.
and it's at the bottom of what you're talking about, did that have any bearing that these were in such poor?
No, these got there all on their own.
Okay.
Yeah, just age.
Okay.
Yeah. We've, a lot of these lines are in like the 30s.
Great, but I didn't know, because you're saying these are in such bad shape, and I don't know if they run down to where Benham, so I was thinking, I wonder.
Ironically, Benham was actually, the pipe itself was in really good condition. What had happened was the top of the pipe had been nicked when conduits were installed by a utility company.
Oh.
And when they.
Are we gonna sue?
Don't tempt me. So when they nicked it, they did a full band of coupling around the pipe to repair the leak. And in pulling out the pipe and looking at the band itself was probably, 30 years old? 20, 30 years old? Ooh. Yeah, so
Oh, wow.
it's been there a while. But what had happened was when they had nicked the top of the pipe, because it's steel pipe, the crack actually ran along the entire crest of the top of the pipe and went the entire length of the pipe. So what failed at Benham was literally this one stick of pipe that had been damaged. Yeah. So the rest of the pipe, if it hadn't been for that crack, the rest of the pipe was in great shape. And then the pipe that was connected to was in great shape too.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, but, we did add a bunch of valves when we did the Party Big Cut Sacramento Street project, and that was helpful when that happened.
Right.
But we have some more efforts to do for us to get new valves. So the next project is, some initial, funding for the US 50 Corridor Action Plan, or as we've been calling it here, the Trip to Green Pilot Project. El Dorado County Transportation Commission has been spearheading this effort, thanks to Jerry Barton and Woody Deloria. And one of the things that they are working on with Caltrans was the need for a lead agency other than the state be helping in facilitating and implementing this project. And obviously, since it's in the heart of our town, it makes sense that it's us, and also I do the short straw. So now we're going to be providing some oversight and some project management, coupled alongside with our dear friends over at the Transportation Commission, and it'll be an exciting opportunity for us to see what we can accomplish as far as tripping all the lights to green during peak seasons of recreational. For those of you that attended and participated in the Transportation Commission meeting today, we have some initial weekends. It's the fourth weekend of both September and October as tentative weekends. And we currently submitted those to Caltrans for approval. And part of the intent of that is to allow for us to do this effort and then take a break, because it's a 40-hour effort.
Wow.
We're all gonna be bringing sleeping bags and canteens, and turning to bring the whole camp out.
They said that Caltrans has never done this before.
Yeah, the proof of concept is what they call this kind of project. It's basically proving that having no signals is gonna be good.
Okay.
There's a whole host of different ways that we can improve the traffic operations on Highway 50 through town during peak season. The other benefit of doing something like this is, in the, God forbid, instance that we would need to do a mass evacuation, this would be one
I think it's great, yeah.
I just hope it goes really well. and
I
that-
do too,
and
Kara.
that
It will.
Residents love it.
We are gonna
Oh,
public
no.
outreach everybody.
And that it works great and solves the problem. And then we can start just doing it every weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I brought that up to Caltrans, I got a, so, you know, I mean, they're very patient with us, and we work really well with our deputy director, Patrick Bishop, who, you know, we may recall we worked with Tom Brandon before this, and, our maintenance, out of D3, out of District 3, they're amazing. Like, the courtyard guys are great, the maintenance guys are great, their management is great, they really do work with, local agencies, and so when we kind of came up with this little brainchild and I talked them through it. They're like, okay, you can kind of see the level of discomfort, but we're working through that, and we're, you know, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. So we are thinking through this a lot. In fact, it kind of hurts my brain a little bit. But I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do with this proof of concept, and then ultimately what kind of foothold that gives us in the future for a larger, more permanent improvement that really is what's needed.
Yeah.
So do you have to go, like you're saying, your sleeping bags and stuff, do you have to go out the night before and set up all the signage and everything?
Yeah.
You can't do anything ahead of time?
Yeah, so we get an encouragement permit for a total amount of 55 hours, and the level of effort of having it all tripped to green is a 40-hour time span. And we're only allowed 55-hour increments. They have to be consecutive, and they have to, we have to plan in the setup and breakdown time on either side included in that 55-hour period. So we are looking at starting to set up around like 11 p.m. on a Friday, and then carrying it through all the way to Sunday night.
Sunday, yeah.
So,
Okay, it's going to.
that's right. We're just gonna let the Bay Area know. Don't come on the other weekend.
Bless you.
So the next project is also related to US 50, and it kind of follows into the Trip to Green pilot project. Is
I have a
that,
quick question
oh,
on that.
yes, sorry,
So those TIM fees are our money
yes,
to fix somebody else's problem,
yes,
to fix a problem somebody else created.
yes. Traffic impact mitigation.
Of course.
Is the county offering up anything to support this
Well, I
program?
mean, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission,
No,
the one that
no.
secured the grant.
El Dorado County, Board of
Not
Supervisors.
yet. We are talking about utilizing urban STBGP funds, which is the county's allotment of STBGP.
Okay. Because this is not created by us.
Agreed.
So,
We've been telling them that for
We
how
don't have
many
enough
years?
heartbeats to create this kind of problem.
right. So just,
Yeah, Mayor, I struggled with that too, because I knew that. I don't see us putting more money into this going forward, but this was, our commitment to make sure the project keeps moving forward and gets done. So,
Yeah, the effort that we're showing on this, and kind of to piggyback on the city manager's statement was, you know, this shows the city has a vested interest, because when it comes to, you know, this is kind of a leap of faith effort from Caltrans too. Caltrans is, you know, when they came through with some highway operational improvement suggestions to the community in several iterations over several decades, we kind of chewed them up a little bit. So, you know, they're a little gun shy. And to Caltrans' defense, they are not a group that forces improvement on a community. That is why you do not have a HOV lane in the city of Sacramento. They did not want it. If Caltrans had their way, they'd have an HOV lane all the way through. So they, you know, we had to come to them on, hey, we really need to help to figure out a solution. They would love to come up with a solution because they get the phone calls too. So, so this was a way for us to kind of put our skin in the game. Caltrans is putting their skin in the game too. And then, based off the funding amount that we, just discussed, the county, putting some skin in the game too potentially.
Well, the sad thing is that Placerville gets the blame for how, you know, but it's not Placerville. It's, you know, created like Dennis was saying, you know, east and west. Okay.
So, the next project kind of follows in suit with this, it's US 50, westbound Oxland / permanent traffic operational improvement. Now, this is a project that actually already exists in our MTIP, and so we, looked at utilizing something that's already in there and seeing what we can make out of it. This is, again, staff time and effort. This was a requested commitment from Caltrans to show that we're gonna be going in this together. You know, we're both jumping into the deep end of the pool and going at the same time. So we really, you know, they're putting forth a lot of resources and efforts on their end as far as project management goes. They've been working with us on the corridor studies and the singled out effort to do public outreach with the city. So when we did that public outreach effort, you may recall we did an online survey. We actually got a great response, and overwhelmingly the amount of responses was to support some sort of permanent operational improvement, not just the consideration of westbound Auckland, but really the consideration of a flyover facility. So, you know, at one point we actually did look at a depressed freeway as well. We do have some rock and groundwater to contend with that make that pretty rough to get through. So we were looking at doing a flyover facility within the existing right of way. So, but again, this is, at this time, this is all we're committing to it through traffic impact mitigation. And talking about one of my other favorite facilities in the city is our Hangtown Creek Water Reclamation Facility, or as we affectionately refer to it, the WARF. We are looking at replacing aeration basin blower number 2. It actually is part of the activated sludge process. If you want me to geek out, I can explain all the processes. It's kind of fun. Otherwise, I'll take over the glossed over look on your faces as please skip that. So, but this, we have received a couple of estimates for this, and we're looking at doing this replacement effort for about $150,000 out of Measure H funding. Turbidity meter replacement is the next project. This one, we do feel that there may be some additional future funding needed. We're pretty close with the $25,000. It may be 30, so not too far away, but we are still in the process of receiving some of our estimates. You know, again, the WARF is one of our, I believe it might be our most current physical, most expensive facility we own and maintain, and we want to take really good care of it. And this is actually one of the items that helps us still own and maintain it. The turbidity meters are a part of our monitoring and operational process with our permitting too. The next project is replacement of our secondary scum pumps, also a vital part of our clarifying process. If you ever want, I'll be happy to draw you a diagram of that too, but essentially skims off the top, which is like a foam, and then sends the almost disinfected water on down the process. So this will actually send water that goes and heads into disinfection, and it goes through the modular treatment units, of which we replaced one of them this last year, rebuilt anyway. And then ultimately, then it gets disinfected and then discharged into Hangtown Creek. So this is one of the last efforts in the process before it actually goes and gets re-discharged. Belt filter press building. So the belt filter press, actually, you know, because we end up with solids in there too. The belt filter press squishes it flat and squeezes out the liquid. Hope everybody's done eating dinner. Sorry. But the building, but what happens when you squeeze that, you end up with all kinds of gases and things like that. It's very corrosive. So it's taken its toll on several appurtenances within the building and also the roof. So we're looking at doing some overhaul to that building. It's been in service since 1991. So we like to, you know, 30-year-old facility at that time. So we definitely want to do what we can to keep it going. And much to the credit of our staff at the WARF, they really do an amazing job of squeezing service life out of facilities out there. It's quite impressive. Most of these facilities, you know, I mean, every 10 to 20 years you're rebuilding things here and there, and they can almost double service life out of things. It's really impressive how meticulous they are about maintenance. So.
I got a question on that one.
Yeah.
It says it will prevent future potential maintenance costs, odors, and the disruption of operation. Does that mean that it would reduce odors in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
This one gets it.
Yeah. Yeah, I put a heart around this one too.
So Rebecca, or or maybe this is a Dave question. On these things, don't we have a maintenance, like a maintenance fund in our, anticipating that these things are gonna happen with each particular, I mean, this is a biggie, obviously. So what do we do with a set aside?
Yeah, that's a great question. So within your rates, you have a contingency of about $400,000 for emergencies.
Okay.
But, you may recall back in 2009 when we raised rates pretty significantly, one of the things we tried to do was build in capital, and we weren't able to do that. So then Measure H came along, Measure L, and we're getting more sophisticated. We don't have a deferred maintenance, well, we have a deferred maintenance schedule, but it's in the development stages.
Because I think that's really important. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
we need to start looking at that. Because
Yeah.
obviously these things are gonna keep breaking down.
Yeah, and we do, actually, staff does a really great job of, a running, recommendation for CIP lists for me. So, you know, about December, I say, okay, start thinking about your Christmas list, you know, what do you guys need?
Yeah.
And so, their big focus is on, basically just keeping the plant reliable during heavy rain. So, you know, a lot of that comes from I&I infiltration, in the sewer systems, right? Well, we are working on that through all the sewer projects we've talked about previously. But we can't get to it all at one time. So we can't change how fast the ball is being pitched at us. We have to get a bigger catcher's mitt.
So by doing the improvements further up the line is going to.
It'll soften, over time, will soften the impact to the plant. But what we can do now is we can certainly, you know, put some measures in place and speed things up to prepare for that inflow. The next one is the waste gas flare control system, and this is, I'll attempt to not completely nerd out on this one because I really like this one. So as part of our sludge digestion system, there's a big vertical tanks that are over towards the Headworks building, if you guys have ever been out to the plant. One of the cool things about this process is it creates its own gas, its own biogas, and it burns off through the waste gas flare control system. As part of the flare control system actually burns off the gas, and this is what it does is it actually repowers the digester itself. So we basically make our own fuel and repower it.
That's great.
Yeah. So anyway, we have some initial estimates here. We are probably going to be coming back for some additional funding. $25,000 from Measure H. The next one is secondary clarifier number 3 drive unit. Secondary clarifier number 3 actually supports the drive unit itself is the functioning moving parts of secondary clarifier number 3. And in that process, we use it as part of our final settling basin component in the process. I can get a little more detail that one if you want, but other than that, $25,000 requested for Measure H. Possible additional funding needed. And then this one, I'll refer to Assistant City Manager Dave Warren, and also you may have noticed, just to kind of touch on, because we don't have write-ups for a few of these, you may have noticed your draft capital improvement program budget spreadsheet here, this handy dandy beautiful chart that Mr. Warren put together. And towards the bottom, projects 39, 40, 41, 42, and also on the back side, 43, are existing CIP projects that we are proposing to add funding to, either for ongoing annual funding for it. For example, we're adding $100,000 as the annual water valve replacement program. And then in other instances, I'm very excited, we are actually programming construction funding towards the Conrad Street sewer line replacement, as well as the Broadway maintenance project from Mosquito Road to Snow Pool Road. And we're putting ongoing funding towards Canal Street to address the rest of Canal Street, as well as ongoing annual funding for maintenance of our parking.
So, for instance, you brought up, funding sources like sewer enterprise fund. Are all those recommendations, or at least asks, or entries in here in this process, are those funded? Or is that funding there and ready? So this is not one of those things that we're gonna go, I don't know if we can do that or not, the funding's there when we're talking about the enterprise fund.
Yeah, the bottom line on the, page 4 of the summary, the only funds that we have concern about primarily is the general fund and your water enterprise fund. The other funds, and actually some of them, we actually show a surplus at this point, but for Measure HL, projects that both, city engineer needs and, Nick Stone, Public Works Director, showed, we can fund them based on our forecast right now. And the other thing, and that's from net revenues, we actually, at our last Measure HL committee meeting, we actually, we feel that we may actually have a surplus this year that we can roll into next year, so additional funds for projects and reserves.
2021,
21-22.
21-22.
Yeah. So a surplus this year, is 2021.
Okay, that we carry
Rolling
over to
into
this year,
21-22.
to this coming
Right,
fiscal year.
correct.
Okay,
Correct.
current
That's
fiscal year
based on
rolling into.
forecast. It hasn't happened yet, but
Gotcha,
we're hopeful.
thank you.
And to kind of, piggyback on Mr. Warren's, statement there too, you know, because we are under spending on Measure H&L, that allows us to bank the underspent amount in the construction reserves, which, means some of those projects that maybe don't have all the funding right now, they become eligible for it. So it's a good way for us to keep moving on projects if one of them happens to, gain momentum ahead of others or become a high priority. And with that, I will turn it over to Warren.
Thank you, Rebecca. There's one last project, and that is the water sewer rate study. And you may recall, those of you on the council, back in 2018, you adopted a 5-year rate study, or rate schedule for both water and sewer rates. And, those rates, the last increase takes effect June 16, 2022. And so that would carry into the 2022-23 year. And so the maximum number of years you can approve is 5 years. That's why we did 5 years, based on the Prop 218. And so what we're recommending is bringing back a contract with your consultant, Bartle Wells, if that's what you wish, to do another study for the following 5 years, starting in June 15th of 2023. So that gives us a couple years to plan, have workshops, educate the public. I anticipate, knock on wood or plastic, that the level of increase is going to be more with inflation, not catch up. So we knocked out a lot of things in the last study, and we're kind of caught up for the most part. So unless there's some major inflation, I'm hoping that those rates, I don't want to set myself up, but we're hoping that it'll be more moderate increases going forward. So, and that, the total for that, $50,000, half of that coming from the water enterprise fund, the other half coming from the sewer enterprise fund. Any questions? Okay, great. And so going back to the summary, you can see again, the total for all of these projects is $3,791,458. $121,458 for the general fund, and you can look across and see what the totals are. The biggest from Measure L, and thankfully, based on our forecasts, I anticipate we'll be able to, unless there's a major shift in our sales tax trends, that we will be able to fund that $2.3 million in the Measure H and the other funds. Again, the water enterprise fund and the general fund are the two primary concerns I have right now. We may have to make some adjustments in order to fund that. Water enterprise fund, I think most likely we can take that from fund balance, but we'll need to evaluate that. So we'll have those answers for you at your next workshop.
I've got a couple of questions. There's two capital improvement projects that I've had in mind that I don't see on this list. One is a road project, Canal Street, close to, Highway 50. The sidewalks are like really bad, and it's on the way to the high school. They're narrow, elevated, have telephone poles in the middle of them. You can't get like a stroller or a wheelchair or anything down them. And I was curious where that is on the priority list.
So it's actually, project 41
Oh, it is?
on this list. Yeah,
Where did we?
I know,
Oh.
it's kind of snuck in
Did
there,
I-
sorry. But we haven't forgot about
Okay.
you now. I get calls from parents here.
Okay.
And then what was your other project?
Okay, and then the other one is a facilities project, and it was, I think that this facility needs some like security hardening and probably some technology improvements. And I was wondering if that's on anybody's radar, is that something that staff is considering?
CARES funding.
It is, we've actually taken an initial look at that, using, some of our CARES Act.
Okay.
Or, is that the right term? It's not CARES Act, it's,
American
Recovery Rescue
Okay.
Fund, funding for that. There's still a little bit of question whether or not that's an eligible cost, but hopefully it is, and that's, tentatively what we've planned for that. Now, that'd be part of that whole discussion, the stimulus funding that I've mentioned to you that we hope to have at our next, workshop that we do, but
Okay,
yes, that's definitely on our radar.
all right,
As you can tell, we talked about, taping the camera up for our meeting tonight so that we can make this work. It's not the best technology, but it works for now. But yeah, that's actually minimal. There's a lot other technology advancements that we are looking at. And we do have an estimate. We had a cost. We actually submitted for one grant for that. It's around $45,000.
okay,
To completely redo this, the technology in this building.
okay. And any thought to like security improvements?
We did a security analysis, and we did quite a bit of security upgrades,
Okay.
well, especially to the office areas, about a couple of years ago now, Terry, I think,
You know,
right before you got here. So we have done quite a bit, you're right, the exterior doors are not the best.
Okay.
So there may be some things we could look at doing there. We've looked at that in terms of being able to put together a system, because we have a lot, when we're actually operating programs, a lot of contractors that need to come in and out of here, and keeping that handled. If we had a security system that we could set the doors to lock and unlock or either be able to that, or, you know, issue a code or something to these contractors, I think would be of value to us too, so. We can take another look at that, so.
Great, thanks.
All right, moving on to capital outlay, it's the wider blue tab. And the first request is building permit tablet. Mr. Levi could provide us an update on that.
These tablets are sort of a companion project to the software package we're hoping to purchase. This would allow for easier ability of the on-site inspectors when they do their inspection, actually put the information directly into a tablet, which then goes directly into our system. So rather than being the hard copy that we currently do, we would switch to more digital, which allows for greater efficiency, greater speed in doing inspections, and that hopefully will play both for the building inspectors and for code enforcement. So we were happy with these particular tablets that are specifically listed. We went through quite a few. I personally was amazed at how inexpensive these were. I think they're, can't really see it here, $200 and something a piece, so $500 and some odd dollars for two is pretty good price for these tablets, but hopefully the inexpensive tablets makes up for the expensive software.
Right.
Give it a shot.
You're really reaching, yeah.
Any questions on the tablet? Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. The next item is a full-size 4x4 pickup for the Parks and Rec division. Terry Zeller will present that item.
Good evening again. This is for a 2021 F-150 4x4, and the idea of this is to essentially take the place of a 2004 or 2005 Ford pickup that's already had a second motor put into it. And so instead of retiring that, of course, since we're a resourceful small town, we're looking at using that for getting a couple of seasonal workers out. So it's actually going to So that is the, ask for that pickup truck. It looks like it's gonna be around 35,000. The one we got last time was, around 31, so the price hasn't gone up that much, so, I think we'll be well within that or below that amount. And then, the second one is, a key log. And, if you wanna look it up, it's keylogrolling.com. And, if you haven't seen these, they are, pretty popular with, recreation facilities, public recreation. And what we're looking to do is to purchase one, and this would be in addition to our inflatable, and looking at, putting it in on weekend times to generate more revenue, and also it could be, utilized as a programming element for a class also. So, keylogrolling.com. Any questions?
We get it, all the council have to try it.
You can actually have contests and stuff, you know? That'd be great.
One of those when I was a
Council
kid.
versus staff.
It was like a real.
Yeah, right.
Terry, when's the pool opening up for the season?
We're looking at, early June. Yeah, typical, opening time. We've got our new, rec supervisor, and we've got our, we're getting all of our lifeguards to their paces right now.
Normally Memorial Day weekend, I think, isn't it, Terry, that we do that?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
Did we get the money from the county? The 20,000?
We put in for it. I have to follow up.
It was approved, and and then we put in for it again this year.
That's
So,
what I meant, yeah.
I don't think they finalized their budget, but I don't think it'll be an issue.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. All right, the next item is, 2 chainsaws, and there's several other pieces of equipment that, Next Stone will provide details to.
These are two of our smaller chainsaws. The ones that we've been using now, we work on them internally whenever we can. We've been having to send them out to, Power Tool pretty frequently. Can't tell you exactly how many years we've had them, but I know that it still doesn't make the model that they are anymore, so parts are getting harder to find. The amount of time that we're trying to spend to use them is starting to exceed the amount of time that we spend repairing them is starting to exceed the time that we use them. Next one's a pole saw. It was probably purchased around the same time that these chainsaws were. It's in pretty bad repair. I know that we've replaced the bar on it, it's been bent. The guys try and take care of stuff to the best of their ability up there, but as much as we use stuff, the wear and tear takes its toll every time. After that, it's a pole hedger. Another steel product, same thing as the other two. The one after that's a backpack blower. That would replace one of our handheld blowers, but we feel that for the slight cost increase over our handheld one, the efficiency is greatly increased with that.
I think it's easier on the backs too, for
Yeah.
the guys.
After that, there's a street sweeper automatic pickup. So now when our street sweeper goes out, say he's driving down the road, he goes through a process engaging his controls where he engages his sprayers, turns the water on, starts spraying, lowers the broom, turns on the vacuum, and he's doing all this stuff while he's driving down the road in traffic. And every time that he starts and stops and backs up or does anything of that nature, goes through the whole process. It's 20 or 30 steps, with the buttons and everything like that. And so what we found is that, we've replaced a few of the switches 2 or 3 times, just because they're being used so many times. What this will do right here is it's basically a computer program that goes into the brain of the sweeper, and it's like you put the parameters program in there, push a button, and then it does basically all those things with self sensors. So we feel that it's greatly going to increase the safety of the operator and also the wear and tear on the machine. The next item after that, it's also a new item. It's for the street sweeper. What that is, it's a backup camera. A lot of times he'll be driving down the road, sweeping stuff up, and he's watching where he's sweeping and watching behind him. But people get impatient behind him. They try and pass around him, and It's very hard with something that wide when people are right behind you. And so right now he doesn't have any ability if they're that close. And all the new pickups that we get, they all have backup cameras. It's like a standard feature now. And I think that'll greatly increase the manner that he's able to operate that in a safe, effective way. Next item after that, it's a commercial wet dryback. So when we go out with our giant concrete saws or asphalt saws and we're cutting the road up with water, it creates a slurry. That slurry is part of our MS4 permit, isn't allowed to go into the drain. It makes a mess all over the place. So what we do is we vacuum it up and then just go and dispose of it in the yard. Our current one died not too long ago, so we've been using a Home Depot version, wet dryback to do the best that we can to get that up. After that, it's another small one. It's a new Vector truck. Our current Vector truck, it runs great. Whenever we've had to take it down to be serviced, they've complimented us on the condition that it's in. However, the California Air Resources Board requires anything in the fleet. One of our options would be to put a newer engine in it, but because of the year that it is, it's not very cost effective to do that and then have the aging equipment. So we can still run that until 2023, but I just want to get it in here to give you a warning that that day is coming that it won't be able to be used anymore. That's probably our most used piece of equipment too. It saves back, saves wear and tear on the guys. It allows us to go out and pothole, with fill services, all kinds of stuff like that. So after that, water leak detection kit. So what that is, it's kind of like it's a set of earphones with a microphone that the guys, if the traffic isn't too bad out there and we suspect we're seeing water come out of the pavement, you can go out with that and you can kind of use it to pinpoint where the leak's at to give you a better idea of where you should be digging to make the repair. The one that we've got now, it's pretty aged, it's pretty beat up. I guess it's probably 15, 20 years old, so this is a replacement for that. Next one after that, it's utility locating equipment. It's a traceable rodder. So right now, whenever we go out to, we do USAs, the underground service alert, and so you'll see like boxes painted on the ground or the call 811 stickers. Whenever a contractor wants to come in, do work anywhere in the city, they call in that 811, the USA, and it's dependent upon whoever has the utilities in that area to go out and mark their utilities so that contractor doesn't hit them. So what we do with that, with the sewer lines, is right now what our current process is, it's look at our maps, go out there, identify the potholes, the manholes, and we'll take our sewer camera and it transmits through the head, and we also have a handheld locator. So it's a two-man process, one guy pushing the camera head, another guy with a locator, tracing it out, and then putting paint marks on the ground. What this does is it sends a signal through that whole line, and so one guy could go out there, set it up, run it through the line, and then go out and paint everything out that we need to. It gives us a lot more efficiency. After that, it's water meter handheld devices. The ones that, this is actually kind of all lasted together with the new software too. There'd be software and hardware. So the handheld devices and the touchscreen devices, right now we're using the Radex system. A bunch of that's going to become obsolete, I think, at the end of this year. Correct, December 31st. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick, the handhelds aren't that old. They're about 4 years old. And we use these to manually read the meters, and the company that produces the meters and maintains them, Radex, informed us about 2 months ago that they're no longer going to provide service to them. So they'll still work, but if something goes wrong, and emergency law, it's not something, you're basically relying on those to calculate about $8 million of revenue a year, so you don't wanna go cheap.
So,
Are these
do
not
you have a
on,
contract with?
We do, we have a maintenance contract, however, it's contingent, it's
Whether they,
mutual, so, they have an out.
are there any other companies that?
Yes, and that's what Nick is presenting.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate that.
Oh,
Census is the company that manufactures our meters, and so it's kind of like a package deal with all the different, the handheld meters, everything will work in conjunction.
Are you, somewhere along the way this evening, we talked about, or I heard this, that you're going to meters that transmitted.
We're trying to, and that's also another project that you'll see a little bit later on here, with, what's the name of it, the funding?
American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue Plan,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
That was something that,
And these would work with that?
yes.
Okay, got it.
I'm sorry, I should ask if there were questions about the chainsaws in the back here, I've just been trying to go
You
through.
just want us to ignore it.
Well, I do have a question about the Vector when I don't know when we're ready, but,
I'm sorry,
that's all right.
I think that's the last one, so,
Yeah.
any questions about any of that
No.
stuff, I'd be happy to answer.
Just the Vector, I mean, would we consider putting money away this fiscal year, next fiscal year to get ready for when we have to swap it out, as opposed to, like you said, well, we're not gonna do it this year, but I want you to let it know it's coming, right? So, is that something that we're gonna do? Is there grant funding for things like this? Probably not.
I'm sorry, that's something that I forgot to bring up too, is that I've been talking with, Chief Wren, they got, their new Tesla through the AQMD grant.
Mhm.
So hopefully when the next round comes up, it's as an opportunity that we'll be able to look into for that.
And I would imagine that Vector truck has somewhat of value on it, since it's in great condition.
We reached out to, Freightliner, because they spoke highly of it and said that, you probably get something. The first number that they threw at us was like 15 grand. Yeah.
Ooh.
A pretty quick internet search, like if we put it on Equipment Trade or something, we get a lot more.
So how
than
much would
that,
a new
so.
motor cost, a new engine?
I have no idea. But I would say based on the age of the equipment and based on what it would cost to put it in there and convert everything, it's probably a
It
lot
wouldn't be
more
worth
cost.
it. Okay.
It's more cost.
I was just thinking of a stopgap, if it wasn't that.
That's $300,000, so I mean,
Yeah.
an engine.
322.
Yeah. The other option would be to finance it, and that's how we financed the first one. The
Right.
current one was our very first Vector truck that we financed in LA.
Okay.
So we could, there's the AQMD, Air Quality Management District grant, that would be wonderful, or partially funding and maybe a capital lease or cash.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll look at all those options.
So this is really, Vector truck is in here for informational purposes only right now. I mean, unless we felt really good. Unless we start drinking.
I'm not doing
Okay, got it.
One quick comment about the water meter touch read devices. So we have our current handhelds, which is equipment we own, but they're no longer going to be serviced. And the Public Works Department has been forward thinking, and as they replace meters, they put in touch read meters, which means that if we had a water meter touch read device, instead of lifting the box lid, scraping the dirt off and reading the meter and then punching it into the handheld, we could simply use the wand to read the meter and move on, thereby reducing staff, impacts, workers' comp rates, those kind of things. So in addition to the handhelds, what we're proposing for now, we did talk about the automated drive-by reading, but that's going to take some time too to actually implement. But the other option, we could purchase these touch read devices and begin doing that today, this fall, and start utilizing those, which is more efficient. So doesn't mean we have to do it, but it's something that I would ask the council to consider. So,
Thank you.
you bet.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. The next item is marked patrol vehicle, and I'll ask Chief Grant to.
Let's talk about something fun, cop cars. Everybody likes a cop car until it's in your rearview mirror. So several years back, we developed an equipment replacement program internally in the police department. Part of that was obviously our cars. That's our most consumable resource that we have inside the organization. With that, we determined that if we came to the council and requested 2 marked cars per fiscal year, that we would be able to stay on track with that equipment replacement. Well, last year, we got behind. So this year, I'm in front of you asking for 4. Right? So what ends up happening is you know, we looking at our vehicles and our mileage and our service requirements, we can stretch the service life of a patrol vehicle out to about 5 years. So from purchase, we'll get 5 years of service out of it, which may not seem like a lot, but other jurisdictions are burning through them in 18 to 24 months. So it just depends on how many you have in the fleet and you know, the unforeseeables that happen, striking deers, getting into vehicle collisions, stuff like that, which has happened here. So with that, the way we stand currently in our current fleet, because we are short, it puts us in a position where we're hot seating cars. To hot seat a car means it's running 24 hours a day. It's going from shift to shift. Yeah. So that 5-year service that we had originally projected is now cut in half or less, because as it gets further on in its service life, more mechanical things start to occur. Another challenging thing with this is if I wanted a model year 2021 vehicle, I would have had to order it September of 2020. So if this gets approved, we're approving a vehicle that's already built somewhere out there, and we have to source it. We go to Nevada, we go up and down the state of California and see if somebody over-ordered, and that way we can get a vehicle. If we can't find a 2021, which I know we can, we just have to be creative, but if we couldn't, if this gets approved, I wouldn't be able to order a 2022 until September of this year, because they're specially built vehicles. That's the good news. I won't tell you the bad news. The other part of that, obviously, is the equipment that we put inside the vehicles that has a substantial cost as well. It's getting harder and harder to find those companies that actually do the vehicle installs. We were down in Elk Grove today talking to a company that does that, and they're 4 to 6 months out on a build. So if we brought them a car, we would see that car in 4 to 6 months. So it's a challenge for us in the city.
Are those costs included in these numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So vehicles themselves are relatively inexpensive because we buy them on a state contract, so we get a good deal for them. It's everything else and then the labor to actually install all that equipment that starts setting us back. You know, we've been lucky in the past. We found local auto mechanics that can kind of work through it, but that's just not an option any longer. They no longer do it because they realize the work it takes and the juice isn't worth the squeeze for them. So, question about cars. Got cars.
We're getting 4 cars for his 1 truck, so. You know,
I think it's a good deal. I don't know. We're pretty aggressive with grant funding opportunities, but the thing is, a lot of the state and federal grants won't fund vehicles. We got lucky with AQMD. They'll fund other things, but they won't fund the vehicles.
You couldn't get Tesla cop cars funded?
Not for the frontline vehicles. They have to be pursuit rated, and that's all done in Michigan, and this big old process that they do. Because I was like, hey, just go to Thompson's, buy a couple Corollas, man.
Yeah.
It'll be good. Then we'll have to talk to the union and see if they'll approve that for us. Any questions on cop cars? I'll move on. If not. Okay, so I can count on 4 of them.
Check.
In-car computers. So, speaking of our aggressiveness in seeking out grant opportunities, we realized we needed to replace our current in-car computers. Many of them over 10 years old. And if you know Moore's theory, you know, they go bad in 6 months a lot of times. So I was able to secure a Homeland Security grant for $56,500. So that will be used to purchase those computers for individuals. They'll issue them to the officers. Technology's improved so much, it's like a tablet type, and it locks into the into the docking station. And then the officers can take that out, go to calls and actually work off of that. So, anything more? Dave had kind of a thing with that. I covered it good. Okay.
So that would be fully covered by the grant.
Yeah, there's no match. It's 100% funded through the feds. So that's our $56,500.
There you go.
Unmarked vehicle, that's a want, not a need, but it would be a need next year. We were fortunate in securing the grant through AQMD to purchase the Tesla. That's being used for administrative services. What we've done, since I've been here, instead of buying new unmarked vehicles for administrative, detective, and support service staff, we just say no greater than 20,000, and then we go to CarMax and find something that we think would work for us. Because those vehicles, their service life pushes out to about 10 years, because they're assigned to an individual, and they're not driven hard, they're really well maintained. We've got some of them now that are 15, 16 years old, so they're costing us more to keep them on the road than if we would just start over. So, any questions?
And you're only asking for one.
Correct. And then we're good on administrative vehicles. Just the patrol vehicles chew us up,
Yeah.
and we recognize it. We try to find ways to be, to stretch that out. It's just a consumable. It's just, they need it. I know everybody that lives here wants the cops there quick. In order to do that, we have to provide them with that resource that gets them there. All right?
Can't Fred Flintstone that.
What?
He said you can't Fred Flintstone that.
I thought you said you approved my own.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
So on the blue bar, the summary that's in the front of that, item, you can see that the total is $708,701. $339 is from the general fund, which is a primary concern. But the amounts for the water and sewer enterprise funds and the grant, we're okay there. So, just to let you know. And then behind the capital outlay request, you have the computer replacement workbook. I want to thank Jason Tanger, our IT director, keeping this up and refreshing it each year, actually ongoing. And at the very back on page 14, we're not going to go through all this unless you have any questions, more routine in nature, but you can see in fiscal year 21-22, the total is $64,843.24. So that's based on the normal replacement schedule that we have.
And that actually combines last year and this year. That's why it's a little bit higher than we expected. We didn't do this program last year due to the pandemic. So that's getting us back on track on our schedule for computer replacement.
And then 25-26 is gonna be a big year. Is that,
5 years later.
yeah?
You mean 5 years out from now? We're gonna look at ways to try and, there may be some things we can do to minimize that.
Okay.
So, spread that a little bit. We do this, the 5-year replacement, but there may be areas where sometimes we don't have to replace a couple if they're less used and are working well, so we have to look at things.
Great.
All right, moving on to the green tab, alternative service levels. And these are ongoing expenditures, increases in program, decreases, new positions, those kind of things. So the first request is code enforcement official position, and this is an item that's related to the tobacco grant. So you may recall that the tobacco grant was a 3-year grant, and this is the last year. So Director Rebus, if you could walk us through this request, please.
Thank you, Dave. The first request that Development Services is making is to add the additional half-time to our code enforcement officer. It's currently half-time. As Dave mentioned, the position is funded half through general fund to perform code enforcement, things. And then the next half was funded through the tobacco grant. That tobacco grant is ending, and even though the police department tried to reapply for next fiscal year, we did not get the grant. So that half funding for that position will end. And even besides that, I think our workload in code enforcement far exceeds even the ability of one full-time code enforcement to keep up with the workload. We're diligently trying to deal with the defensible space and fire safety. And that's a huge amount of effort. We have the transient issue. A lot of these camps are on private properties, and some of these camps now are constructing permanent structures would otherwise be subject to building permits. We're finding that some of these have wood-burning stoves in them, which is a huge fire hazard. We found one of such structure on Lumpton Ranch property known as Placerville 128 property. That's a 128-acre parcel. So staff is very concerned about that. So again, these code enforcement follow-up cases take a tremendous amount of time. They take a tremendous amount of my time. So it would be, it's imperative that this, to me, this is one of the top priorities, I think, in our department is to make the code enforcement position full-time. Any questions on that? The next one is we are asking for an additional position, a administrative secretary position. Our workload now is such that we continue to fall behind in all of our administrative work, as far as filing, maintaining our paperwork, scanning, all of that behind the scenes paperwork that has to be kept up to speed just to remain efficient. And I think with this additional position, we should be able to then stay on track. Currently, we are borrowing thanks to Community Services Department. We have been borrowing an administrative secretary from that department. We also have a part-time person that we use 1 day a week, but she's able to help us do some of our filing and scanning work. And so with one full-time additional administrative secretary position, then we should be able to keep up. Just the amount of paperwork and everything we have to do with all the additional requirements that keep coming, it's very difficult just to keep up. So this is another very, very important position for the department to have, just to maintain operating in a feasible manner. And then the last one is we're looking at basically upgrading our current administrative secretary position to a development technician. And that is a position that we're modeling after the same position that they have in Oklahoma County in their development services department. And currently, our administrative secretary is, I would say, working at a class. In fact, that person is doing a lot of work that I would otherwise be doing, because I don't have the time to do it. And without this person, I don't know what I would. I'd have a sleeping bag in my office. So I think it's really important to recognize the efforts this person has been doing. She maintains our forms. She's always making sure we get new forms to keep up with the new regulations, new requirements, does research, and basically does a lot of management of the Interwest building team that we have. You probably all understand that we don't have our own employees in the building division. Our building official and our inspector, the city contracts through Interwest. And we've been pretty happy with their services. Our current building official is not only a building official, but an architect. And so we're getting some very, very good service now with them. Unfortunately, one of our favorite building inspector retired. So we have a new one, but he seems to be working out just fine. But again, the workload is really increasing. It was surprising the amount of work that we had even during COVID. I thought there'd be a slowdown. There was initially a slowdown. I remember having those discussions. We thought, if this keeps up, we're going to be in a hole. But no, it really ramped up. I think as people focused in on their properties, a lot of projects put on hold, like re-roofs and a new shed or
putting in a garage or a new family room, that kind of thing really ramped up, and so we're seeing just a lot of activity. So anyways, that's the reason for this. Council agrees. I think it would be really good for this one, because we used to upgrade this position, that's commensurate with the duties that the person is currently engaged in. Happy to answer any questions you have.
It's more of a general question, because as we move forward through this, you're talking, we did a lot of, well, laying off in the fall. And so we gained. Voluntary retirements, right. So, yes. Golden handshakes, you know, we work with people to retire them so that it would save us money, and we all know the deal. So as we're moving through this, we have realized the savings from, we've probably gotten to the point where we're starting to realize the savings because of the, you know, the payouts and such.
Absolutely.
We're hitting that moment in time. Is that a thing right now?
Yes.
And now we're looking at, because when I look at all these expenses, I'm thinking, well, we saved a lot of money there in staff time, where we're starting to see the benefit of that voluntary retirement program. But I'm also starting to see the stress of the staff, of them getting their, you know, hitting what they need to do to, you know, to run a city. And also to continue doing the road projects and all the things, the unfunded mandates from the state, and you know, all the different programs that we have to deal with. You know, we got the, whatever that is, permit thing that we have to deal with, and you know, everything has staff time with it. And we were doing that with more people, now we're doing it with less people. And I'm starting to see the stress points hit. And so are we having a conversation about adding some of those positions back? Do we have the money to add those positions back? Because I hear a lot of things of asks here, but we really haven't talked about people or butts and seats. And, you know, this is just the beginning of it, and I don't know if this is the only one, but where are we? I mean, do we have, so we came out of this a little better than we thought. Sales tax revenue was better than anticipated by X amount, and I don't know exactly what that number is. But where are we in terms of an overall approach to, because we were cut down to the bone to begin with before COVID hit. And now we're here and we're hitting bone. So where are we at in terms of repopulating some of those seats that we have taken out? And you know, we only have so much money to go around, and we need patrol vehicles to, you know, to keep people going. So where are we at with this?
So you'll see this pretty much throughout the departments to some degree. Mm-hmm. What you see though is not just, we're gonna refill this position, the left, but we're trying to do it, I would say, smarter, in that we're bringing the positions in that make more sense rather than just filling a seat that was vacated before. And so what you're seeing here in terms of these ASLs they're described, lots of them, as new positions because we're changing the work, the way it's being done, in order to hopefully get more done with less, because we recognize we've got to do that.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be, as we talked about in the end, it's going to be a struggle to meet all of it. Obviously, we won't be able to meet all of it, but we will, through this process, hopefully be able to start bringing some of that back. So, as you say, start to lower that stress level that our departments are going through. So,
but how are we measuring this? How do we know? I know by hearing, our staff does not complain. They get the job done. But I also know by the conversations that is also extremely challenging. And you don't want to lose good people because it's just unrealistic expectations. And so, but what is that? I mean, it seems like that should be a conversation in itself. or, and how does that work into this process?
Well, again, I think the process is trying to find that balance between bringing back what staffing we can
Right.
within the means that we have to do it, because there's still a limit to what we have. And, what it really comes down to is, we could go on like this maybe for a little bit longer, but eventually it comes to a point where, say, you can't do it anymore. And
Right.
then you come back to that point of saying, now we're gonna start cutting services.
Right.
And we never wanna get to that point, but that's the bottom line, eventually you have to do that. If we can't find that the revenues are there to bring the staffing levels up to handle the service level that we've been used to.
So, following up on what Dennis is saying, that when all these folks, you know, took their leaves and everything, and it turned out that we really weren't in as bad a shape as we thought we were in and stuff, why can't we just refill? I mean, you know, in other words, where did that money go? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I understand what Cleve's saying in that we wanna go, you know, now that those people are gone, those seats are vacated, we're gonna reevaluate what the best approach is going forward to look at how we appropriate those dollars to positions and where they might be better suited. So they're thinking about it, but what I'm wondering is the conversation around the employees and the departments and our ability to fulfill our obligations in some of these, whether they're mandated or they're, you know, just getting our projects done through our Measure H&L or, you know, how many people are in your department?
Well, let's see, we have a city planner, myself, we have an administrative secretary that we're borrowing, we have two administrative secretaries, and we have the, two part-time Interwest employees, and they're working just twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays.
And code enforcement.
And then code enforcement.
Code enforcement. And how many did you lose?
I think when I came on board, that was the existing.
Yeah.
So you're
This last year,
He
there were not any
Okay.
voluntary retirements in development services. So, but I will say, we've kept Pierre afloat this last year, I'll say. Because he has had a very heavy workload, even though it's been during the pandemic. We loaned a recreation administrative secretary to, his department during that time. And so this position that he's asking for is just to keep that level going, because recreation now needs that person back, because their programs are starting up again. So just to go through quickly, engineering probably took the biggest hit last year. You lost 3 employees, right? 50%. Yeah, so basically 50% of their employees.
Wow.
And we are looking at, you'll see when we come to that, we are looking at filling that in a little bit different manner. So we're not just putting the same people back in the same seats. Rebecca and I, we've talked about it, and we think there's a better way to do that. And we think it'll be a little bit less cost than what we were paying before, so it's a better program. Moving on, finance, we had a little bit of change in finance. We had 2 people leave. Dave, help me out.
We downgraded one accounting assistant to a 1.
Right.
And then the city treasurer position was abolished for the most part. We have, right now, you know, your city treasurer was, Kenneth Hardy was appointed. Kathy Tremblay is working, I think it's like, 6 hours every 2 weeks right now, just as we phase her out. But that position is her position, next fiscal year will not exist.
Yeah. So he has close to the same number of bodies, but we downgraded one position. Except for the treasurer, yeah, which we combined with, which we eventually will phase completely out. Community services, we did some reorganization actually during the pandemic, if you recall, right, both for Gold Bug and how we reorganized that. So I think they're in pretty good shape. Police department, I think we have filled all of those positions, correct, Joe, that, from the retirement? And so, however, we lost a lot of, what can I say, senior skilled employees over there that, and so, but they're doing great, in terms of, I think, keeping kind of that level that we had before. Can I say that, Joe?
Awesome, yeah.
But anyway, they're,
He just wants his cars.
they are doing well, but you'll see there's some requests from him that we'll go through here also. My department, once we fix engineering, I'll have my assistant back, hopefully. She's been doing a great job, because she's been handling, you've heard Rebecca talk a little bit about encroachment permits. I know she's been handling pretty much all of those for her, and so it's been a big help there, so, yeah.
So is it safe to assume that what staff is asking for is what they need to do their job? What you all think you need to handle the workload that you are
I would
being
say
given?
yes, absolutely. It's
Okay.
not a wish list. It's,
Yeah.
it's basically what's needed to keep the department running efficiently and do the job that we're mandated to do. And I think the mayor, touched on this, and that's unfunded mandates from the state. Every time I turn around, we all know we get some new Assembly bill or Senate bill or regulation from the regulators. And we're also, sometimes I feel like I work for the state of California.
Yeah.
Because of all the additional work that we have to do, it has to be done. It's not we can't put it off. We have to do it. A lot of, what the state's been doing now with the housing element, we're trying to finish up our cycle 6 housing element update. It'll be due, we'll submit it, the draft, on May 15th to HCD. But they tie it in other things. We're mandated now to update our safety element, which we probably want to do anyway, but it's now a priority because it's required in order for our housing element to be certified. So we're gonna have to take a look at that, spend the time doing that. And again, there's no increase of staffing, but there's an incredible increase in workload. Those kinds of things we have to do. A lot of new ordinances are on backlog we need to bring forward and bring to you eventually. So it's those kinds of things that we're trying to stay on top of.
Louise, is there any kind of a pool that we could hire, like temporary? I mean of qualified people that go to cities, to help out, on a secretarial level?
Well, not real, there's not much on that level. Usually if we need help in that area, we'll go like to a Blue Ribbon, temporary services and stuff like that.
I didn't know how many.
But on a higher skill level,
Yeah.
there are certain groups that do that. But again, that's for temporary help. I mean, for example, we've taken advantage, you probably noticed that, Sergeant Cannon, or I guess he's not sergeant now, Ron Cannon has come back and helped us as our school resource officer
Oh, I didn't
for the
realize.
remainder of this year. That's been a big win-win for us, using him for that. While we had an officer that was off on work comp, and we've got that resolved, so that won't be taken care of by the time the school year is over, so it won't be an issue anymore. But just things like that we look at doing, to try to help, bridge the gaps on certain things, so.
Well, I was just thinking if there was a person available that could help here, if there was, that it might have, it kind of is a domino thing, because everybody's borrowing from everybody,
Well, and we've used, Terry had another part-time person that helped Pierre on Fridays for a while with some clerical duties that they had. And she's still helping, okay. So we do what we can, and we use part-time and temporary where need be to help fill in, so. Dennis, I don't know if I've answered your question, but.
I don't know that there's an answer for it eventually, and some of it may come as we go through this, but I know it's been heavy on my mind to understand where we've taken the hits, what the asks are, and how we're doing this, because,
And what
one of the big issues is for our community is to understand we just can't continue at these levels with the expectations from the staff we have. And honestly, if we lose some of these people, bringing somebody else in and trying to get them up and running, I mean, whether it was Rebecca or Pierre, I mean, we'd be so far behind, it'd be ridiculous.
Right.
And,
You guys aren't
and,
leaving.
You guys aren't.
yeah. But the reality is it's just this, we're in this place where every year we have less money to do everything that we need to do, and it seems like every year there's more to do. There's more training, there's more, you know, we got more things are breaking in the city, and you have less people, and the state is mandating stuff more, and well, a lot of your stuff gets paid for through the projects, but even so, there's still the management of the projects from the city's perspective. So. And Terry, hopefully we can have some sports again, you know?
Yeah. Well, softball's going right now.
Yeah, that's good. Is it filled up good?
We're at the level that we expected.
Yeah, good, all right. I mean, and I don't know where, I don't know what I'm looking for right now, but I just know how, I mean, how close we're cutting to the bone and the expectations of our community, and there needs to be a conversation with our community about where we go from here. Because this is not gonna get better from what I understand from projections and revenues and what is it, retirement, CalPERS,
CalPERS.
unfunded liabilities. It's just,
And then
it's
stuff that comes up,
diverging lines
it's like
here.
all the homeless issue that there's, you know, that wasn't planned for,
Yeah.
you know.
And I know I've taken away from, because this book looks like still a little bit here, so I don't want, I apologize for the.
Well, let's go ahead and
Yeah.
go through these again, and then I would, because I do want to have that conversation about what you see as, priorities as we
Yeah.
go through this. So let's go ahead and continue through the SL.
All right, thank you, Pierre and Cleve. So the next item is the assistant engineer position, and city engineer needs will present this one.
Well, Mayor, you couldn't have queued that up any better for me, quite frankly. As council's aware, we had 3 voluntary retirements in engineering in 2020. We lost our full-time inspector, we lost our GIS engineering technician, and we also lost our administration. We've been able to borrow the city manager's administrative assistant for a year. She's amazing and a godsend, so I'm extremely grateful for everything she does for us. We have also been substituting some of these services with consultant contracts through companies that we use for construction management that we know and trust, and the gentleman actually lives here locally, so he has an emotional investment in the town too. That's kind of a requirement. You don't just show up, you have to care. So grateful for his help too. So the original positions that we had, we have myself and my 2 associate engineers, Melissa McConnell and Corey Sheasel. Also, I can't say enough wonderful things about the both of them. I honestly would be splitting my wrists at the desk if it wasn't for them, because they're amazing, and they carry such a huge, heavy workload, and it's very evident that all 3 of us care very much. So for that, I'm pretty grateful. But with that, all 3 of us have basically, we've referred to it affectionately as we've hit fight and wait. But we're actually a little bit in starvation mode. So we talked about it amongst ourselves, trying to figure out how to wisely approach this. Don't just start filling the positions that are empty seats. Thoughtfully assess what services we need backfilled, where we need help. And one of the areas we actually really need a lot of help in is development support in terms of plan review process and things like that. We're struggling to keep up with plan reviews that come through us from development services, items from site plan reviews, grading permits, et cetera. Another area is we are actually also struggling in fulfilling the need for GIS and mapping for the city actually, or engineering manages the GIS mapping for not just engineering, but actually for all the facilities for public works, for police and fire and development services. And so that's very much a needed position to have to help us run that. Corey's been carrying that workload for us and doing a great job. He's updated facility maps throughout the year, and we actually just put a new set for public works about a month ago. But we do also have, as you noticed earlier, the onslaught of projects coming through. We do have Measure H&L projects coming through. So when we thoughtfully went through what we could and needed, what we could use and needed, we came up, collectively with, we need an assistant engineer position. So this is somebody who, under the, guidance of one of our associate engineers or myself, would carry this, extra, set of duties in terms of GIS management, plan reviews, plan checks, some inspections, and even design work. You know, we have a lot of projects that we actually, you know, we have the expertise in-house to design these projects. And it gets, for us, as, you know, all of us are all crafted and molded former designers and, you know, construction management backgrounds. And so for us, it, to a degree, it does get a little frustrating not being able to jump in and actually do the design, because when we do hire consultants, sometimes it feels a little bit like we've hired somebody to tell us what time our watch says. And so, you know, we can be more efficient in that. That's actually one of the benefits of the positions that engineering has requested, both the assistant engineer position as well as the administrative position, is that we have about a 75% cost recovery for our department and our staff in terms of through CIPs, fees, grants, permitting. So there is a lot of cost recovery opportunity for both of those positions. So the engineering, the assistant engineer position would cover the duties that I mentioned earlier. The administrative specialist position would actually help us carry the quite a heavy workload related to just general admin of the department, including processing invoices for progress pay estimates for construction, for consulting contracts, as well as for all of our other little ancillary contracts related to our permitting. They would help us with the permitting contracts. They would also help us with processing some of the private development applications and interdepartmental support through budget reporting, project invoicing, as I mentioned earlier, also storm and wastewater permit compliance, public outreach services, and my personal favorite, grant writing. We really need a trained killer on staff to help us do some of these grant writing. We've been extremely successful with our grant writing, and that's the thing about grant writing, is once you've shown a history of deliverability, you become a attractive candidate to give more money to. And we've been delivering on our projects, and so keeping that ball rolling. We have a lot of things we want to hire folks to get on board to start moving projects forward. And immediately, the first grant that comes to mind is figuring out a way to fund our public safety building, getting grant money for our corporation yard, things like that, where money, you have to be really scrappy to get to it. So I think that this is going to be a good opportunity for that. The other thing, too, that this position would do is they would actually receive a lot of the calls and whatnot that goes not only through engineering, but also through public works. We'll be providing supplemental support to public works as far as that goes, too. So, and then as you know, engineering kind of handles some of the public outreach effort for the city. We do the constant contacts and things like that. And so having some help in that would be wonderful to kind of get the framework set up in place and have a draft available, and this person could send it out for review to the department heads and saying, did I include everything? And then that could just go out. I think that kind of covers it. Do you have any questions? Oh, one thing I did want to add is, this is what we looked at, what we kind of need in the immediate. I will say that, you know, as we see how these positions kind of meld into the functionality of the department, you know, maybe on down the line, we look at, you know, as long as there's cost recovery, another position here and there, because we certainly have the workload to support it. But this was a good place to start. Any questions?
These both positions?
Yes.
Is that a real number, the cost recovery on that, as you?
Yes.
I mean, I see it on paper.
Yeah.
It's something that you can, you know,
Yeah.
objectively say, this is where it's gonna happen.
We're pretty frugal.
Mhm.
So on that dollar,
Yeah.
it always brings joy to my heart that, you know, I got city council is like 1 cent, and then engineering costs and general fund dollars. That brings joy to my heart, because I don't want to be like a burden.
Yeah. Well, that's great, because, you know, the net amount is somewhere between 25 and 30 some odd thousand on that position, so that's a really, that's a good thing.
Yeah, we operate like a little company within a company.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Rebecca. The next one is contract IT services. This one. Yeah.
So just quickly on this, as you recall, one of our other retirements in administration was our IT director, George Briggs. And so it left us one person. We got by with one person for the last, 6, 7 months since George left. And he's doing a good job. He's keeping us going. However, he is running pretty ragged. And yeah, he's constantly, I go in his office and he just kind of just staring at the blank stare sometimes. But so, and we looked at this all along, was one of the things we considered was rather than hiring a second person, contracting out some of the routine services that we offer. And so that's what we're proposing here is and this is kind of just an initial number, $40,000 for that contract based on some conversations that we've had with people that we think that we could provide that relief. And also the thing that we're concerned about is provide that backup in an emergency. Let's say that he can't, our current director can't be there. If it's just one person running it all. And if he's not available, if you would ask him, he'll tell you he gets calls all hours of the day, weekends, weeknights, et cetera. And if a system goes down, especially in our police department, if they go down, they're really hurting sometimes and they're really getting the information they need for calls and et cetera. So, yeah, it's important that we get that backfill taken care of so that we have that redundancy in that department. So, questions? Okay.
Thank you, Cleve. So the next two are from my department.
They want to let me handle the first one.
Sure.
So the finance director position, as you recall, a couple of years ago, we reclassified that and made it assistant city manager, director of finance. And at that time, we did that, and we looked at some costs to compensate for that, but we never did implement it. We didn't do anything. We didn't basically pay Dave for the additional workload that I asked him to do. So what we're doing here is recommending that take place. A little bit of cost recovery that Dave can talk about a little bit that we're proposing that will help in terms of some things that he will do from in terms of cost from different funds that will play into that and that will help in that direction. But I'm recommending this. I think that Dave's done a great job. As you know, every time I decide to take a week off, we have an emergency that he has to take care of, it seems like. So I appreciate what he's done, and it's been good for him and I working together. He's done a great job for me. So I recommend that. And then I'm going to I may add a little bit more down here on another position, but I'll let Dave go through those first, and then I'll add in when we get there.
Good question.
Yeah.
Down at the bottom where it says revenue to be generated, what does that mean in regards to this position? By adjusting this position, it's going to save the city this money? Is that
What it means is it's a combination of cost recovery, meaning that there's billable time towards grants and enterprise funds. The other thing is that there's activities within that position that benefit the water, sewer, and parking funds that's not being billed. And we've just lived it with it that way. But there's a clear nexus to bill those funds accordingly. And I think this is very conservative. I think it could potentially be more than that, but we didn't want to overextend our estimates. So.
Is that on an annual? That's annual.
That's on an annual basis.
Okay.
So am I understanding that making this adjustment to staffing would save the general fund over $500,000 a year? Am I reading this correctly?
Show me how I have.
Well, that's still down at the bottom of.
All I want to.
Now, 630, or.
So for all the proposals.
Oh, dollars, not thousands.
No.
No, why?
Dollars.
There's no K after that.
Yeah.
I wish that was.
I was like, thank you, I don't want to do that.
So
You're not used to these small numbers, are you?
Oh my God, I'm looking at such big numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just
To make us
but
feel good.
it could be as much as $5,000, but there's, that position, there is already cost recovery involved.
Okay.
That's just the delta between the current cost of the position and the future cost of the position.
Okay, so I was understanding the cost recovery minus the zeros.
Zeros.
The missing
I
zeros,
wish
okay.
it was we could add the zeros, but,
All right, thank you.
So I just want to back up and thank you, Cleve, for those comments. These two items, the first two items, are in response to the 2019 citywide reorganization. It started when Steve Yule retired. Steve Yule used to oversee Public Works. When he retired, we created the Public Works Department, and we also had a change in development services where engineering broke off into its own, from a division to a department, and with the WRF. And again, this was a piece that was not complete. The other, it was also when these items are in response to the City Council's governance workshop, there were some comments made about the city manager perhaps spending more time on strategic matters as opposed to tactical. And so this is more of an opportunity. This is definitely not something we have to do. It's just an opportunity. But what it would do, the second request would reclassify a half-time accountant position to an assistant finance director position, which would provide more financial support in the finance department to free up my time to help Cleve with more tactical items. The assistant finance director position would assist with month-end and year-end close procedures, budget development, audit administration, some grant administration, financial analysis as needed, and backup to the assistant city manager, director of finance as needed. And then the assistant city manager, director of finance would provide, and these are preliminary, but just as an example, more routine items such as problem solving, public complaints, kind of as an ombudsman, administering general liability claims, serving on PARSAC, which is then going to become CIRA, which is our general liability property JPA board, administering daily parking program, managing the IT division, providing general oversight of other departments as necessary, and let's see, reviewing non-financial related staff reports and preparation of administration staff reports, and assisting with preparation of the city council agenda as necessary, and other duties as assigned, which is to be broad. So
That means I can do anything,
Yeah.
give me anything I want.
So currently, you're not doing quite a few of these duties.
the things I just listed,
Yeah.
In Cleve's absence, I do, but not on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
I have shifted some of the parking administration over
Correct.
to Dave. He's done a little bit, not all of it. So, yeah, there's some things that I've given him a little bit of.
All right, good. Thank you. Any further questions on that one?
This is Michael. Just a comment, and I appreciate Dave and Cleve and staff to looking at this and coming back with this suggestions. I know we all kind of echoed. There's only so much Cleve, and so to the extent that we can provide more of that assistance, whether it's a special project or when things just come up, like nobody anticipated COVID, but every year there's going to be something that just pops up. That's going to take sort of a special project type of lead that I think Cleve, there's only so much that he can do. So I like the idea of sort of this reorganization to free up more of Dave's time. I still think we have a PIO issue in terms of just public information, and I'd like to explore that more. Just whether that's a contract or something, but just to be more proactive on the information side, as opposed to it being an extra duty for somebody or wrapped into them, that it would be sort of their main thing to do on the PIO side. And I just think, if we can get that, and that might be dealing with the website, the social media, handling constituent calls, whatever it might be. But I do think that that's something to at least maybe take a look at as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Forgot it was you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Zaragoza. Moving on to the next item. This one's a little unique. We've been talking a lot about PERS, was mentioned of our unfunded liability. And what I've done here is calculated our cost of 1% of a salary. So if you took a 1% for all regular full-time positions, the cost is $68,915 currently. And so the thought is what if the city were to contribute an additional 1% of salary towards pension contributions? The goal would be to reduce or accelerate the payoff of our unfunded liability and save interest. So rough calculation I was sharing with Cleve earlier today, it would actually, rough estimate, save us about $9 million over a 20-year period. And it would reduce from a 20-year payoff to about 11-year payoff. So this is something that the city of Elk Grove is doing. And they're also prepaying their contributions in July, at the beginning of the fiscal year, to avoid having to pay interest on that. So, and it's something that it doesn't have to be 1%. It could be 0.5%, 0.25%, 0.25%, and then ramp up. And the cool thing about it is it grows with your payroll. So you're slowly ramping up that payoff. So the analysis I did was based on a static 68,000, but if you built in inflation, it would speed up that 11-year payoff probably to about 8 or 9 years. So that's what that proposal is. A little rough, but I wanted to bring it to the council as an option to consider.
So what if they change their?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So that's the $5 question. And we can all probably assume that what we think it is today, it's gonna go up.
Right.
Because people are living longer and they're retiring earlier. So, it's a moving target, however, it puts you ahead. You know, we're basically paying 7% interest, which is kind of high in today's market. And if we can prepay, reduce that balance, like your credit card balance, quicker, it's gonna save you a whole lot of interest in the future. So, you know, there's other options, but
What do we pay now? What's it, Mike?
Against the actual unfunded liability, it's about 1.7 million a year right now. Yeah.
So, at the very beginning of this, my mind was somewhere else. I didn't catch where that money was coming from.
Well, the way it would work is it's how your personnel's, basically your labor distribution. So how your positions are funded. So we build into your budget your pension contributions. And whatever that percentage is. And so instead of, let's say it's 10% or 20%, we would basically tack on an additional percentage point to that cost, but that money would be set aside for pension contributions, advanced pension contributions.
So it's just based on your funds that you have those allocated to, that would come from there. So for example, in this case, general fund is what, 47,000?
So for a police officer position, which is primarily general fund, we'll say 100% general fund, we would call that particular 1%, let's say a police officer is $100,000, and 1% would be $1,000, right? So that means that the general fund would contribute an additional $1,000 towards the unfunded liability.
Okay.
Position from the sewer enterprise fund, we would say 100% wastewater treatment plant operator would be, it was $100,000, say, $1,000 from the sewer enterprise fund.
Gotcha.
Okay, the next item is there's 2 police officer positions. Chief Grant, if you can walk us through those, please.
Well, now that you gave me the cars, I want some people to
I was
bid them.
just gonna say.
Let me just take a couple minutes and talk about staffing and how we come to the number that we come to in order to provide a 24-hour police department to handle public safety concerns. So Every year, the U.S. Department of Justice sends out surveys to agencies to get, among a bunch of stuff, is law enforcement personnel. So nationwide, the average is 2.4 officers per 1,000 residents. That would be, if we had 12,000 people, that would be 28.8 officers. We have 18. So obviously, we're below what the national average is. A more realistic way to look at it, and I apologize to Mike because I'm using a prop here, but you can watch the video, I guess, is capacity to handle, instances as they occur. So if this is our department and the fluid inside here was stuff that happens, we would want to have the capacity to be able to absorb all of that stuff. And for 2016 to 2019, we were able to do that without any issue. It limited our ability to respond to certain special requests, dealing with traffic issues, homeless issues, because we would have to rob from Peter to pay Paul because there was no personnel available to go handle those calls. So if it was just strictly responding to calls for service, which we averaged 1,800 to 1,900 a month, we were able to absorb that capacity. We didn't have an issue. 2020 was we'll all agree it was a weird year, is probably the understatement tonight, but we saw an increase in calls. We saw an increase when everybody was supposed to be locked down, not doing anything. So traditionally, when we were absorbing that capacity and up to 2019, it was fine. Now this bottle got twice this size. So our ability to absorb that capacity was stretched to almost a breaking point. On top of that, we also had issues of people contracting COVID, so then we had to institute our continuity of operations plan, which is a plan that we develop in case something happens. In this case, it was a pandemic. And we started having a reduction in available resources, i.e. our personnel. How do we still provide that level of safety and service to the community? We instituted the continuity of operations plan where we pull people from different areas. And we basically took a traditional chessboard and made it look like a checkers board. But we were able to do it. So that's how, that is a more realistic way of looking at how to effectively staff a police department. Not what the national average is, but what is our capacity to handle the requests for services that are coming in. So we've met that challenge, but we're exceeding that capacity at this point because we went from 1,800 to 1,900 calls for service a month, and we're averaging 2,200 to 2,400. So that water, that stuff's got to go somewhere, and it overflows a lot. And so it gets back to what I think it was City Manager was saying about what services are we providing. Right now, you call the police, you get the police, and we don't want to change that because if you look at I'm going to pick on roads for a second. Sorry, Nick. Go for it. Probably should have said over there. Potholes. People are mad at the pothole.
Right.
What is the city now doing? The pothole, the pothole? And residually we hear it, and we work for the city, we take pride, and we want to address those citizen concerns. Imagine that pothole is now a police officer. People are saying cops don't show up, you're not responding to our calls, you're not properly investigating this. That erodes public trust in our ability to go out there and do our job. So that's the balance or the tightrope we constantly have to walk at the police department, because we don't want the citizens to think that we're not a responsive agency, that we don't take their issues, seriously. So that's where we're at. Somebody got my soapbox here for a second. That's how we determine capacity. Can we continue to do it?
Question for you. Do you think 2020 was an anomaly?
No, it's because it's continuing through 2021.
Okay.
So when we were averaging about 25 calls per shift was okay between the two officers that work. We patrol with 2 police officers per 12-hour shift, and they have a supervisor that manages and calls in resources and assists. you know, last night they had 41 calls, today they have 45 in a 12-hour period. So that goes somewhere, and it's our staff, so it's that elastic band is stretching. And that's kind of where we're at.
Aren't a lot of, is it, okay, the one element, the homeless thing? I read the police log and stuff, my God, the time you guys spend with those people.
Sure.
And I don't mean that I don't mean to call them those, but I mean.
Right, no, yeah.
But it's, so if that were to be corrected, maybe,
It will never be corrected.
okay.
I'm just being, I hate to say that, but the problem is, you know, we used to manage that population through incarceration. They would commit a crime and they would be held accountable for that crime, and they'd be put in prisons or jails. That model's been eroded. They're out in the street now. They're not getting time.
That's true.
So people that, you know, people that need governmental services, those services aren't there anymore. Or there's not that safety net catching them any longer. So that's what we're seeing.
Well, and this is Michael. I'll just say we're looking at probably tens of thousands of more, you know, CDCR felons being released for cost savings as well. So you look at some of the legislation that's passed, and you know, nowhere for these folks to go necessarily afterwards, and it's only exacerbated that homeless problem, but also the shuffling door. You know, folks that should be in jail that are not in jail at this point, or prison.
Absolutely, thanks, Mike. So the answer to your question is not going to be, there's nothing that we can do here. We can only try to manage it and keep people as safe as we can. It's a complete failure of the state government, in my opinion.
Is our police force being hit with the same type of call for changing, like from, you know, to have mental support group instead of, you know, maybe not having as many officers, but having it shifted to another type of?
Yeah, we've heard that, but you know, my answer to that is, you know, a lot of the calls that we go on, you want a police officer there. The funny thing is, you don't I haven't heard the social workers actually answer that question. Do you want to go to a call with somebody who's having a mental breakdown or some sort of psychosis? It's happened in other states where a social worker was killed.
And I do keep reading and hearing that too, that they want both. They want a police call to be, you know, they want a social worker, but along with a police. So I was just wondering if you've been hit with that.
I don't think we've had a lot of pressure in that area. We've heard it from other communities, Sacramento, of course, are doing things, but I will say that through everything we've gone through in the last year, for the most part, we've had some conflicting sides on different issues, but they have all been pretty much supportive of our police department. And so for that reason, I feel that we're in a good position with what we're doing.
Good. I just wondered what was.
You know, we have a absolutely fantastic community that shows daily its support to the police officers, which I'm extremely thankful for. You know, as the department head, I've got young officers, and there's, you know, when they go out and people are buying them lunch or saying hi and talking, I mean, that's awesome. I see what happens in other jurisdictions, and it's just sad because our profession deserves better than that. But here, this community is awesome, and obviously we'll provide that service whether they like us or not. But it's easier to reciprocate when they're nice to you and they like you. We want to go the extra mile.
It's human nature to be appreciated, you know.
And that's why we go to every call. You know, calls because people just need help. They need an answer, and sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't. But at least we'll go there, and maybe we can utilize a resource that they're unaware of and provide it to them so they can get the answers to their problems that they're having. So, with that, speaking of the capacity, so in order to balance previous year's budgets, oftentimes if we had an unfilled position, we just wouldn't fill it, we would freeze it, and our capacity was still able to absorb it. Well, that's changed, obviously. So what we're asking for is 2 police officer positions that were frozen previous years, 1 to be assigned to detectives. Currently, we only have 1 detective. That's Aaron Pratt, who's done a fantastic job. but he's averaging about 100 cases that he has to follow up on. So some of that follow-up is not actually him going out there on every 100 of them, because there's some you could take a look at the crime report, make a determination that if there's no victims, witnesses, suspects, or investigative leads, it just goes stale. It's a case that we don't do anything with unless something pops up. Unfortunately, you know, so if you have that 100, if you're able to wipe out 80 of those, you still have one person following up on 20 serious cases. And that number, it keeps cycling through. It never really goes down, especially with the calls for service increase. So we would like to add another detective into investigations. With the second, you know, we like to put that either into the hot team to assist our current hot team officer, which is Amber Robinson, who was out today and gave me an awesome briefing on some of the challenges that we're going to have, or traffic. The two biggest issues that we get right now, biggest complaints we get right now, are homelessness and traffic. So if we get a call for traffic related concerns in a neighborhood, we either have to have patrol try to address it, which have already shown they can't because they're getting 40+ calls per shift, or have to bring somebody in on overtime or utilize a specialized grant like the Officer Traffic Safety Grant. So you do a good job. It's just I think we can do better when it comes to that. Any question on those two officers?
So, I don't know if this is Law's question. You don't have any revenue generation. If I think of traffic enforcement, there'd be some level of revenue generation.
There is some through state fines and fees, but we don't deal with that. That's done through courts, so it's difficult to say. You know, if we write more tickets, we get more money. We never want to incentivize an enforcement activity monetarily.
Well, that was a touchy, that was a touchy question, and I understand that's why. But it seemed like there would be some, if you put somebody in the traffic enforcement, and I know I drive around this town enough to know that almost nobody stops at a stop sign in this town anymore. It's just like, I swear,
I do. I stop at all.
Yeah.
I stop twice.
Make up for the guy in front of you, huh? But you know, the reality is there's and I don't, you know, because people might get a little upset with us when we start saying we need to start enforcing the laws. I mean, but that's kind of what we do. So.
Well, and a lot of that also goes with the shift through the court system as well. Yeah. They're not holding people accountable. They're not fining them. They're not. Yeah. So that stuff dries up as well. I mean, that's several years. I'm take a quick, not a hard right turn, but maybe a 45-degree angle right turn. That is what impacted our ability to get reimbursement for trainings, because we depended on court fines and fees to be put into the state fund to reimburse police officers for training. Well, when they wiped all that out and started turning felonies into misdemeanors, we lost that. So the state had to scramble and try to find another funding mechanism, which they have. They realized that.
What about speeding tickets? Do we get much revenue off?
We could through the fines, but I don't know what they
I have figured out a way to combat all the mess on Highway 50 through here and increase, and we just need to start making this a speed trap like it used to be. And we'll get a reputation that people are gonna quit coming through here.
Yeah, yeah. We write a lot of tickets, and in the monthly reports when we provide to the council, you can see the increase year over year. In a month comparison, you know, we write a lot of tickets. That was when we sent out a community survey a couple years back. You know, traffic was one of the high things that people wanted us to address. So we did that. And then we started writing a lot of tickets, and then they didn't want us to address it anymore.
Exactly.
So
they're losing business.
we're finding that balance.
Yeah,
we're trying to find it.
I love it.
Ticket ourselves into a submission.
So that's those two police officer positions. Any questions? If not, move on.
So those numbers are for 2 officers, not per officer.
Correct. That's true. Next one is the lead lead police services assistant position. That's Julianne in records. There's only one Julianne. We rely on her for an awful lot. she, essentially runs our records unit for us. Always has the answers. Oftentimes gets put into a position where she has to, train new dispatchers that are coming in on the records management system, or even officers at times, who need to access those systems. She's that go-to for us. So, and there's some things that we want to do in there. We actually want to ask for another, police, services assistant. I think that's the very next position. So that's kind of a follow-on to this. If we were able to get this, I definitely think it's important. So, I had mentioned previously about our continuity of operations plan. Without naming anybody, somebody in records got sick, because of the COVID and was off, and we had nobody in records. So we had nobody processing our reports to go to the district attorney's office. We had nobody fulfilling requests for reports to citizens. We didn't have anybody. So that instituting that continuity of operations plan, we realized then and there that we had a significant gap in that area and several other areas. Thankfully, the other areas we were able to kind of jostle some people around and train them and those auxiliary duties to fill that gap. But with Julianne, there's just not that. We had Ray. Ray's a part-time annuitant. We completely took him off because of his health concerns during COVID, so he wasn't even around. So records went dark. I was up there answering phones, and that was just a mess. It was a nightmare. Yeah. I feel bad. I'd like to publicly apologize to every citizen that had to call in. I did my very best, but I came up short several times.
Is it Sandy Patty? Wasn't
Shirley Patty.
Shirley, didn't she used to do records?
She helps, but she's the everything else.
Oh,
She's the
okay.
evidence analyst, property. So really, her and Julianne are two just very valuable employees that we don't have a backup for. Shirley, we've kind of filled in some of the gap with Commander Mayseal, learning her process. But with Julianne, there's just not that opportunity, and the states and the federal government's requiring us to now do RIPA reporting and NIBRS reporting, so it's an additional reporting that we never had to do. So as it stands now, if we don't get an additional person in there, we'll go dark during the week. So Wednesday was the day that we've identified where we'll have to shut down the lobby just so she can prepare those reportings to the feds, to the state.
What is your visitation?
Right now, it's Monday through Thursday.
But I mean, how many people usually come in, average?
Oh, shoot. It depends. Average, probably 15, 20 a day.
Okay.
Different things. Some of those are handled by, police requests for service.
Sure.
Others are records related. So any questions on that, police services? The next one is, police dispatcher, records tech. We had the hardest time a couple years back filling any of these police dispatcher positions. We no longer have that issue. We actually have a waiting list of people that want to work in that
Really?
position.
Wow.
So we're very fortunate. We'd like to take advantage of that opportunity, since we haven't had this in the past. So 1920, we did freeze a dispatcher records technician position. We're requesting that become funded, so we can bring our dispatch back up into full staffing, give us opportunity to. Right now, we can't have more than one off. That's another thing about the police services. When somebody's off, we have to backfill. We can't. There's no other option. And we run just a very flat staffing. We don't have extra bodies floating around in any of our departments, either support services or operations side of the house. So, it's not, if a police officer doesn't show up, I can't grab Julianne and throw her in a cop car and send her out there. So those are the challenges that we have right now with this, refunding this position would give us an opportunity to better manage dispatch and reduce our overtime expenditure. And this is a completely new position. This will be a police sergeant position assigned to support services. The police department is broken up into two divisions: operations, which is everything you would associate with a traditional police department, everybody in uniform, everybody responding to calls, dealing with stuff like that. And then we have support services. Support services is all the behind the scenes stuff that allows our folks to go out there and get the job done. Detectives is part of that, school resource, records, dispatch, police analysts, property and evidence. Right now, there's one sworn employee that oversees all of that, and that's Commander Mayseal. He's a manager. He's not a frontline supervisor, so it's that role transition needs to take place, that he needs to get the resources that are available out there to the people so they can do the job. So right now, he's getting the resources, he's going out there, and now he's supervising them as well. So he's wearing two hats. So if we get another police sergeant position to oversee investigations, help out with dispatch, scheduling, personnel issues, stuff like that, records, it would be of a great help to him. He can be more efficient with his time. But I demand a lot of our staff. I love them all, they're like my family, but they know when they come to work, it's time to work. And if we can reduce some of that workload that I place on them, it would be great. All right, no questions, so got the cars and the people.
Cars and people.
Thank you. I hope I shed some light on our staffing and how we do that. The police department, for some odd reason, never does a good job of explaining how we deploy our resources. And it's always a question, and I think it's because we live that life, we just assume everybody else knows it too. Somebody the other day told me that, I don't know why you guys couldn't deal with this, you have like 6 people working a shift. We have 2, and it was like a light bulb went off. I don't think they realized that. So it's a 24-hour, 7-day week, rain or shine, your cops are out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So,
Can we, take a 5-minute break?
We need to increase mission day.
all right, thank you, Mayor, Council. I just want to kind of recap where we're at. We were looking at our alternative service levels, and the total for those before cost recovery is $1,260,893. And we have $221,060 in identified cost recovery. So if you subtract that, the net cost is $1,039,833. And the impact of the general fund is just over $1.2 million. If you subtract the cost recovery, it's about $1 million. So the other funds are listed there at the bottom of that sheet, the yellow bar. So unless there's any other questions regarding ASLs, we'll move on to conference, training, and travel. Okay. Many of these items are routine, and I know we promised to get you out of here at 8 o'clock. That was about 40 minutes ago. So if you don't mind, what we'd like to do is go ahead and just kind of highlight new things that you may not have seen before, or things that are fairly significant in our training. So the first one is Development Services Planning Division, and Director Elas could walk us through that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Quickly, the first one, the first one there is for the planning services, the planning division. The lion's share of that $1,750 is for planning commissioners. We continually get some turnover, we get some new planning commissioners, and it's an extremely important position for the city because they're implementing our general plan, they're implementing our zoning ordinance, our development guide. And it's important for them as lay people to understand how the development process works and what we're trying to achieve here in the city. So typically that's to send them to a seminar. We try and restrict it to local, getting on an airplane and flying to, Timbuktu somewhere. but strictly looking at something that's local, that's put on either by the American Planning Association or something of that nature. And then I think we have just a little bit in there too for planning, if there's, some, course or something that myself or the city planner can take. But typically, we've been able to avail ourselves to a lot of, free webinars. It's amazing how many webinars are available for free, allows us to keep up to speed, so we
You
take
could sit
advantage
all
of
day
that.
on the computer.
You know what, we could,
I know it.
sometimes we do.
I know.
It's a new world out there. The building division, we have $525, that's basically about half that is for code enforcement. Again, that's important, we like our code enforcement, compliance person to go out and take classes that are available, mainly because of the legalities that are involved in enforcement. You're always looking at then private property rights, and we don't wanna step on rights, or we just have to make sure we're being legal on how we handle when we're entering properties, telling people, well, you gotta correct something, and sometimes if things get, very hand, of course, we have our men and blue that help us out. The last one is, Development Service Administration, and, no, we don't have anything there, so that's it, if anybody has any questions. It's a pretty slim budget for conference meeting travel for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. And the next section is engineering, and city engineer needs will cover this one.
So, we are looking at, purchasing a wider range of, GIS programming available with more speed, not only for our department, but also for counties to use with HOT team, and also for public works to be able to, pull up and utilize, facility maps on hand. And so, it's not, typically when you buy programming, you have one seat, but we're looking at expanding that service to all the departments. And that would facilitate, training citywide as well. So this is, a placeholder for, training, and then also, they've been hosting the Public Works Officers Institute Expo, typically out of town. They've now gone virtual, and it's an opportunity for us to still participate in that event, kind of keep up to date on some of the more, current bills that are coming through, as well as, just a good opportunity to see how other agencies do stuff. That's, engineering. And then for our water reclamation facility, we have annual, on-site training with American Rescue for state mandated training, confined space, first aid, et cetera, as well as the request for, Northern Safety Day for 4 persons, which is a GWA, specialty training, for wastewater treatment practices and operators. And then also single-day training for 5 persons, on various topics as well. Pretty brief, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to go in more detail.
Rebecca? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
The American Rescue Annual On-Site Training?
Yep.
Is that a mandatory?
Yes, yeah, that one's one we actually fund, every year. It is required.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and the other thing too that's really cool about, the way that we do this training is we actually will include, Public Works to go in and do the training with us as well. So we really get some good bang for our buck when we do that training.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Rebecca. The next section is, Parks Division, and we'll cover this one.
Yes, ours are a mixture of mandatory and non. First one that's mandatory is our CPO training, for 2 employees. We have, 3 that we'd like to keep, trained, and so, 2 are up this year. And, it's a little bit of a expense, but it's something that we need to have in order to keep our pool going. There's also the, California Aquatic Management School. We're looking at sending our new person there, so they, have a better command, over the aquatic management. And then we have, a non-mandatory one we just put in every year. It's nice to go to the, CPRS conference. That's a real good networking opportunity, but not mandatory. And also, we're looking at, getting our front desk staff, some, security training, and we're looking at having more than just our staff doing it, but, our cost would just be the $200, for 2 of our staff members. So pretty straightforward. Any questions? Thanks.
Thanks, Terry. And next we have Public Works, streets, water lines, and sewer lines training. And then, you want to cover that?
Everything that's on here is the same stuff that we have every year. First aid, confined space, those are two that we, as Rebecca mentioned, we usually, share with them at the wharf. Traffic flag and safety. Another thing too is that we do take advantage of a lot of free training opportunities that are provided throughout the year through various organizations. But traffic flagger safety is an online one that, if we bring on seasonal flaggers, we have them go through it because it usually doesn't work out that the free training's provided at the same time. We just like to get them trained before they go out the street. The CEU water, cross connection, asbestos pipe, sewer collections, all those are mandatory ones, from our various permits. They're the exact same as they were, in previous years. Any questions?
Thanks, Nick. The, next section is the councils. And Cleve, I don't know, would you like to tell us?
I'm trying to remember what we put in there, Dave. What did we give them?
$600.
$600 each, I think.
Right.
It's just a number. I mean, there's no real, nothing tied to it, but just a number we put in there for the council.
Well, if this virtual stuff keeps on, we don't need it.
Yeah.
We're attending all our meetings
I hate the
online.
virtual.
It's been great.
So anyway, that's kind of up to the council, each council member, what they want to use that for. There are some things, if we get back to normal league meetings and stuff, sometimes you can go to, obviously the annual league meeting. If it's in Southern California, it's a little more expensive. If it's Northern California, it's affordable, but, usually, so.
And next we have the, city administration, city manager.
So I've got in here a couple of things. One is for city meetings that I generally go to, mostly for travel, going down to Sacramento for meetings. Haven't had to do that for a year and a half now, but assuming if that came back sometime, I've got about $200 in there. And then I did budget for the League City Manager Conference. I used to attend that fairly regularly. I haven't attended that actually since I've been here in Placerville.
10 years?
10 years, yeah.
I think that's a good thing to attend, the networking and.
It is good networking, just the budget hasn't been there, so I've chosen not to go, but if the opportunity is there, I would take it, but. And then the last thing is, some training for our city clerk, Regina O'Connell, to keep her, CMC, she's listening, I hope I said that right, Regina. Certified municipal clerk, I think is the right title. So, to keep her certification that she has, so that's it.
Thank you, Cleve. And the next section is, finance. And so the first item is customer service training. We have, two new employees, an accounting assistant one, that's Mandy Myers, and, accounting assistant two, Joey Vergiaro. And, they're doing a great job, but to maintain those skills and refresh them, I think it would be a good idea to send them to that training. And then for the accounting supervisor who's new in that position, the collection training, she's fairly knowledgeable about that, but there are some areas that I think would be really helpful to help her be successful in that new position. So. And then there's the introduction to governmental accounting for the accounting assistant one, who's, there's a real growth potential there. Overqualified for the position right now. I think it would be a good opportunity there to deepen the finance department's knowledge in that area. And then advanced governmental accounting, this is for the city treasurer accountant. She's completed the introductory and the second level, and so this would be the final level for her to finish that training. So I think it'd be a good opportunity. And then budgeting best practices, we've talked about performance measures, putting that in our budget and our strategic planning. This is something that, I've had exposure to, but it's been quite a while, so it'd be something to brush up and bring to the council for consideration in your budget. So, totals, $1,650 for all those. And the next one is police. Okay, Chief Rand.
Thank you. Let's give an overview. You can see what the course description or titles are. So I'm gonna go through and tell you what's mandated by the Peace Officers Commission on standards and training, and then I'm gonna tell you what's on our training matrix. So the first three courses, supervisory course, excuse me, is mandated by CalPost for newly promoted supervisors. They need to attend that course within the first 12 months of having been promoted. The interview and interrogation is not a mandated course, but is in our training matrix. When I showed the 2016, part of my assignment was to develop a training matrix for every position within the organization, from police officer to sergeant to commander. You know, what does your training matrix look like? That's part of it for the new officers. Basic traffic investigation, while it's not post-mandated, it is mandated in order for us to take enforcement action after investigating a traffic collision. So if somebody goes wrecks, we determine that they were at fault through the investigation, you need this course to be able to cite them into court or to file a request to the district attorney's office to get them into court, to hold them accountable for the collision. Patrol rifle instructor, we transitioned in 2016 from shotguns in the cars to rifles. It's just best practices at this point in law enforcement to have that more precision instrument available to our officers. We have two instructors now. We have one instructor now, Commander Maceo. We want to get two of our newer officers to that course. Additional benefit of that course is it'll allow us to put on that training for outside agencies as well. So there is some potential revenue stream there for that. Firearms instructor, we need those within the organization, obvious reasons. Moving over to investigations, you know, when you move into detectives, a lot of what you're going to be exposed to is going to be specialized investigations. Your homicides, your rapes, your arson, stuff like that. These are the courses that are needed to give you not only a baseline exposure to what you're going to be doing as an investigator, but also afford you the opportunity to start networking with people now in that industry. So if we have a homicide, we have people to reach out to assist. Crime scene investigation, we put for two in there because we want to send two of our patrol officers to be able to assist. We have two that are trained now that just went to training, and it's just, there's so much value that they bring, because without them, we would have to request an outside agency to now send their personnel into here to process that scene for us. When it's in-house, it's much more efficient, and it gets us where we need to be a little bit quicker. Moving on to dispatch, records, and evidence. The basic communication courses are required by post for new dispatchers. The other courses are going to enhance our ability to effectively respond to people that call in to dispatch center as the first point of contact who are in crisis. So give our dispatch staff tools to be able to work through that and provide whatever assistance the person needs on the other end of the phone. Dispatch supervisor course, we don't have a dispatch supervisor at this time. We're hoping to identify one during this upcoming fiscal year. See how that goes. Next one is police administration post-management course is a required course by Commission on Peace Officer Standard and Training. You have to send your manager to that course for the first 24 months of them being promoted to that position. So that's everything I got. No questions? And I've been to just about all these schools, and none of them are that fun.
Thanks, Chief. All right, that's all we have tonight. At your next workshop, we will present our recommendations to you. Speaking of that, are there any additional comments? I know there were several comments for each of these sections. Do you have any additional comments that you would like to provide staff in preparing the budget for the next workshop? Things that you didn't see that you would like to see, or things you wouldn't want to see, or don't want to see again?
Yeah, is there something that we're missing in here that we haven't brought up tonight? I think we've been pretty thorough with it, but if there's a program or something that you think we need to look at, let us know and we can research that. And then the other thing, as Davis mentioned, are there priorities that you want us to focus on? I mean, we get a pretty good idea in talking to you, and some of you I've talked to individually. I know some of those things you have concerns about, but if there's something that you think we're not hitting the mark on, now would be a good time.
Where are we with, like the disaster plan, emergency evacuation plan, and that type of preparation?
It's halfway complete on my desk, waiting for me to finish reviewing it and getting it back to Joe Wren.
Okay, but that's not something that needs to be budgeted to make happen, it's already in the works?
Not at this point. The main thing is getting that plan in place. There may be some budgeting issues we look at in terms of training, but a lot of that I think we can get without having to, look for extra funds or some free training out there and stuff in those areas that we can probably rely on.
All right, and then with Public Works, are you able to get to a lot of vegetation management, or not really?
On city-owned property?
Yeah.
So what we started doing last year is we started, roadside spraying, catching up with that, and so that's been pretty effective, but we're still identifying a lot of properties that we have to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see in your agenda, that's coming out today, it came out today, we're applying for a grant to assist us with that. I've had Terry working on that. So we're looking at funding to contract out for the larger, city properties in terms of vegetation management, and then also to purchase some equipment, to assist us, in, doing that vegetation management on our own, especially on our roadsides and the smaller properties.
It looks like in the governor's budget too, there's gonna be a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I would just say, I think it's pretty important to get our staffing levels back up. I do worry about burning out the staff that we have. I know how frazzled some were a couple years ago when, there was some retirements, and I don't wanna burn out.
Can't hear you, Jackie.
I don't wanna burn out who we have now. I'd like to see our staffing levels come back out. I worry about what I saw a couple years ago with people who were retiring in their kind of state at that time, and, I think we need to be conscious of it.
I don't know whether this is anything, whether we need, but I just got, I was unable to attend the Fire Safe Council meeting last night, and, I got a call, asking me to look into it. I guess we're really for a bad summer, and I don't know whether, whether that needs to be addressed.
Well, we will do everything we can in terms of vegetation management, repairing, and et cetera, but.
And those are, I think, the main issues
our
that they're
emergency
talking
plan.
about, and the evacuation,
Right.
and,
Yeah, they did. I was contacted by, Chris Keeney, today, I guess, or yesterday, asking if, she could, Fire Safe Council wants to do a presentation, not next week, but on the 25th. So, actually, maybe two present. Well, we didn't name a date. She said in the near future, so, yeah.
it just, people would just be more cognizant, and, and again, dealing with the public and, getting them to do their part.
Right. I will, go ahead and open it up for public comment at this time. Regina, if you're still there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm still here. Thank you. Yes, public comment is now open for 5.1, the budget. We will start with call-in user 2. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Hey, so when you were discussing the new hires, I understand the stress and the workload and all that, but I think the question you have to ask yourself is, do you hire one person at 100,000 per year or two people at 50,000 a year? How, that is, like you said, the conversation that needs to be had. The payment to the unfunded liabilities for the pensions, if that's going to be completely on the city, or can you negotiate that with the unions where it's 50-50? Because it is their pension, their future. I think the employees should pay half of that and the city the other half. I love the police department, and I would love to see you make a statement to the rest of the world saying, we will fund our police. And I really want to just ram that home. We love our police, we fund our police, and we are not going anywhere. But I had questions on the police department request for future training. Of course, give them all the training they need. I had a question on the meals and lodging. If these workshops going forward are going to be on Zoom, why would there be lodging? The meals amount seemed excessive. $10 a meal, $30 a day seems pretty decent. So just a question on those costs. And just another positive for keeping staff training up to keep their certificates. City clerk, city manager, police department, etc. It's important for them to keep their training costs up, but hopefully a lot of it can be done cheaply on Zoom and a few of it in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, Sue Rodman, go ahead, please.
Hello, City Council and Mayor.
Good evening, Sue.
I'm impressed with the amount of work that you have put into this budget. And one thing I missed, and maybe I missed it, but I was wondering if we were going to have a full-time compliance officer or maybe two, because if we're going to get people to actually do their vegetation management that they need to do, we need to have a compliance officer that can get out there and say, hey, you guys, it's time. It's past time. Fire season is coming. So that's the one thing I missed, is whether we're going to have that compliance officer on as a full-time position and maybe find another person to help, because that's a pretty big job, I think, when you're doing all the compliance and all the permits and all the compliance for our ordinances that we have. So those are my questions, and I think you guys have done a good job here. I'm impressed. I hope we can find all the money to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. And that is it. Our two attendees. And by the way, I want to thank Sue, if you're still out there, for hanging in there with us for the whole time. You were the one person that was there 100% of the time. So thank you for hanging out with us.
Do you want to answer his question?
Sure. Well, I think.
Well, Pierre did announce it.
Well, we do have one full-time compliance person. That's what we're projecting for this.
That's proposed.
He's asking for
Yeah.
more money.
Currently, it's half-time, we're proposing to bill it full-time.
So, yeah, but we're not asking for two.
No.
Just
I'll
one.
take two.
You'll take two?
Or 1.5.
Sue Rodman, my new best friend.
So some of the questions with the funding for meetings and travel and such, clearly if they're going to be Zoom, we're not going to be paying the travel expense or the meals expense, but we will pay for them to be working on the time that they're Zooming.
Right.
Yeah, and we, correct, and we do have a travel policy, so those meals are based on our travel policy, what we pay for meals.
All right.
I wanted to point point out too, that many of those police department trainings are reimbursed through the police officer standards and training through the state. So, and that funding is increasing, it's my understanding this year, so.
All right. So I think we hit on all of them. I don't think we could split a position and hire two. I'm not sure where that was going. Where did that one go?
Yeah, that all depends on what level of skills you need. I mean,
Just the
that's
training
what
and
it comes
everything else
Right,
would be
right.
significant. Yeah, plus finding a part-time. I think he was talking about officers. All right, any further questions for the good of the order or thoughts? Michael, you still there?
I am.
That is great. Sorry to wake you up, but,
Are you relaxing on a sofa somewhere?
all right. So
Yeah,
for-
not in a car anymore. Yep.
Yeah, so for the two people that are out there, our next meeting is on May 20th, and that's a Thursday evening, and we will be talking then about all of the recommendations from the city staff on how to move forward.
And also, I would ask the council and the public to think about the American Rescue Plan, approximately 2.1 million received, and there's other monies to chase after too. Think about what you would like to use that funding for. We'll talk more about that opportunity.
Are you gonna give us something that you, or a request that maybe in ways that,
We do have our requests. However, we were hoping to, rather than us tell you what we want, you tell us what you want, and then we can fold ours into that. I think a lot of ours are probably similar or the same what you're looking
I
for.
think it's good though for you
But
to tell us.
If you want us to break ours out, we're happy to do that, but I didn't want us to tell you this is what it should be, but.
No, it wouldn't be telling us
Sure.
what it should be, it'd be
Sure.
just, telling us why,
Yeah.
what you-
I think it would be interesting to see what we came up with.
Oh,
Oh, we can do
idea.
both, can't we?
I have some ideas too, I mean, I've been thinking about it.
So what I'm hoping for is you come back with some ideas on the 20th, and then we'll break ours out, after you've told us what you want. And we'll see in what areas we match and what
We'll
looks
see,
good.
that's the way we go.
Again, there are some significant amounts of money in that bill that are competitive that we can go after also.
Like matching funds or just?
Some of them may require matching funds. Again, we don't have all the details yet. That's the one, two things I want to mention. One, we don't know that we'll have that by the 20th. We're hoping we are. They've been promising it for a couple of months now.
But are we supposed to get the money in June?
Yes.
Do we have the guideline, so we don't know the guide, so
We have the very general guidelines, but nothing
can you
specific.
send that
Can you
to us?
send them to us?
Sure, yeah. It's basically infrastructure. That's
Is
how
it,
kind of
whose
defines it.
version of infrastructure is it?
Well, that's the point. What is that?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So,
If you
but,
watch the news, we can just really find a lot of ways to.
yeah. But one of the things that, and I'll work with Dave on this, Dave came up with some things, kind of some guidelines that we want to follow in terms of how we want to use the money, not necessarily what programs we put it into, but how we use that. So we'll send that out to you ahead of time to help kind of spur what you're thinking about.
All right.
And what you want to do. So
Thank
the
you.
only other thing I want to mention was on the 20th, we'll have to think about, Dave, timing. Will we have time to go through both of those items? We see what we took, our 3-hour meeting was a little over 4 tonight, but.
I think so. I think, showing you a balanced budget, hopefully we'll have that for you. You may want to tweak that, but I think we'll have adequate time, and that gives us 3 hours.
Starting at 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock,
That's good.
yeah.
I could always start earlier.
Yeah.
Would you like to start earlier?
I don't mind,
Yeah.
I don't wanna rush through our final.
I don't either.
So 3 o'clock rather than 5 o'clock? Does that work for everybody?
Dinner
Well, if
delivered.
I can make it work.
I think I should be able to, make that work. Let me check, I didn't bring my phone here.
Yeah, that's fine. Just get back with me on
Okay.
it, Vice Mayor Taylor.
We could
Could you do a partial
Depending on,
Zoom?
so we can do 3 or 4.
Okay,
You let us know.
Yeah, you know.
all right.
Yeah, just let me know what time and we'll set it up that way.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, so it's not critical,
Okay.
it's either start earlier or go a little bit later, and
Okay.
9 o'clock's not bad.
No, not at all.
All things considered. All right, with that, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll, see you again in next Tuesday night, 5 p.m.
And every time I go, it seems